They sent 50 men for one merchant. I'm just a merchant.
The day I became the richest man in the Crestfall Empire started with a bag of coins hitting me in the face. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it actually began, at rock bottom. I was standing at the auto appraisal counter in the Adventurers Guild of Ashford, capital of the Crestfall Empire. Late afternoon, I'd just finished laying out every piece of loot I'd hauled that day. Goblin cores, herb bundles, monster hide scraps, bits of bone and claw worth a few coins each. The magic appraiser hummed as it tallied the value. My arms were still trembling from carrying 4 people's worth of gear across rough terrain since dawn. The machine converted everything into a small cloth pouch of coins. Not much, but it was mine. I'd earned every copper in that bag. That's when Drake grabbed it. He didn't ask, didn't hesitate, just snatched the pouch off the counter like picking up something he'd dropped. His party formed a wall around me, the 4 of them. Drake, the magic swordsman, 16 years old, and wearing iron plate armor engraved with his family crest, a greatsword strapped to his back that was taller than he was. Zara, the great sorceress, 15, arms crossed, her ornate staff propped against the counter, wearing a smirk that could curdle milk. Garen, the supreme monk, 20, thick-armed and stone-faced in his martial robes, standing behind the others like a wall of muscle. And Celeste, the holy priestess, 19, smiling that sweet, venomous smile of hers while she waited for Drake to finish his performance. Because that's what it was, a performance. Drake never did anything quietly. He called me worthless, called me a bug, said I couldn't even handle goblins without slowing them down. Every adventurer in that hall could hear him. He wanted them to hear. Zara chimed in. She said cutting me was good timing, since I couldn't level up anyway. Garen shook his head with that philosophical disappointment of his. Said something about how transferees were either brilliant or utterly useless, and I was clearly the latter. Celeste cooed that none of them needed a bug in their line of sight, then turned to Drake with that sickly sweet tone. Wouldn't you agree, Drake? I tried to fight back. I told him the reason I couldn't fight properly was because they'd loaded me down with everyone's equipment. I told him my name was Kai, not the butchered version they'd been using. I told him that paying someone for carrying loads through monster territory was basic decency. He swung the coin pouch into my face. The bag, full of copper, hit my cheekbone like a weighted club. It was the same as being struck by a wrapped brick. Hard metal coins in a cloth sack, swung with the full force of a magic swordsman's arm. My brain rattled. I hit the guild floor, and the laughter started. Not just from Drake, not just from his party, from the adventurers standing at the other counters, from the guild staff milling about. A man gets knocked to the floor by his own earnings, and nobody makes a move. That's how little I mattered. Lying there with the room spinning, I looked toward the reception counter. Bianca, the guild receptionist, was watching from behind her thick makeup and garishly painted nails. I asked if the guild would intervene. She rolled her eyes and told me to handle my own problems. Then, she asked what she'd gain from helping a nobody, her exact words. Then, Drake told her to destroy my card. Bianca picked up my adventurer's ID from where it had fallen on the floor, placed it in the machine they use for processing dead or retired members, and crushed it. The snap of reinforced metal shearing through the card echoed in the hall. She laughed and clapped her hands like she'd heard a punchline. Drake ordered Garen to take out the trash. Those thick hands grabbed the back of my neck, lifted me off the floor like I weighed nothing, carried me to the guild entrance, and hurled me into the street. I hit the cobblestones face first. Behind me, Drake's voice rang out one last time. He told me if he ever saw me again, he'd kill me. The door slammed shut. No party, no guild membership, no money, no identification. I was alone in a foreign city in a foreign world, with nothing but the clothes on my back and a bruise spreading across the left side of my face. The thing about being at the bottom, it's not the fall that breaks you, it's the silence from everyone watching. I headed for the forest. It was almost evening, but there was still enough light to find food. If I could gather edible plants, medicinal herbs, anything with value, I could survive another day. That was the arithmetic of my life now, one day at a time. Not thriving, surviving. The sad part was how practiced I'd become at this. Months of being barely paid had turned me into an expert forager. I knew which berries were safe, which bark could be brewed, which mushrooms grew near water sources. Back in my old life in Japan, I'd always had an interest in natural remedies and herbal medicine. Here in the Crestfall Empire, that knowledge was my only remaining asset. I found a cluster of wolfberry bushes, goji, we'd call them back home. Small red fruits clinging to thin branches, an entire grove of them. I picked them by the handful and filled a worn cloth bag. If I dried the extras, they'd keep for weeks. Nearby, I spotted a smaller bush without fruit, but with soft yellow-green leaves, young shoots, perfect for making eye medicine. They'd fetch a price in the right market, if I could ever access that market. Rain started falling, cold drops on my bruised cheek. I'd missed the signs, the chill in the wind, the heaviness of the air. By the time I looked up and saw the dark clouds hanging above the treetops, it was too late to run back to the city. I found a large hollow in the trunk of an ancient tree and crawled inside. It was dry, at least. I sat there with my knees against my chest, listening to the rain hammer the forest canopy, and thought about a future I couldn't see. There was no going back to the guild. They'd watched me get beaten and laughed. The merchant guild was closed to me too. Joining required a guarantor, registration fees, connections. I had none. My class was merchant, but in a world that worshipped combat power, that meant less than nothing. And the cruelest part, my level. It wouldn't rise. No matter how many weak monsters I managed to kill on my own, the number stayed pinned at 1. Level 1. The starting line, the point before anything begins. For reasons nobody could explain, I was locked there. That detail, the level that wouldn't move, keep that in the back of your mind. There's a reason for it, and when you finally find out why, it changes everything. I was a transferee from another world, summoned to the Crestfall Empire along with others, then discarded the moment they realized I couldn't swing a sword. No family here, no allies, no path forward. I'm alone now, I said to the dark. That's when I heard the footsteps, fast, reckless, something barreling through the forest at full speed. By the time I registered what was happening, it was 5 millimeters from my face. A body slammed into me at a dead sprint. The back of my head hit the ground. Something warm and surprisingly light sat on my face. Phew, made it before getting completely soaked, a female voice said above me, relieved and cheerful. Get off me, I managed. Huh? What are you doing under my butt? You crashed into me? Oh, did I? Haha, sorry. I was fishing and the rain started, so I just dove into the first shelter I saw without looking. She scrambled up. I couldn't see her face in the dim hollow, but I could hear the earnestness in her apology. She bowed. I could just make out the motion. Her voice was young, and there was something unusual about it. A soft nya at the end of certain words, like a verbal tick she couldn't control. Her name was Luna. She was a cat girl adventurer. When I told her my full surname, Kai, she couldn't pronounce it. Her tongue tripped over the syllables. She tried 3 times and failed. Just, Kai is fine, I sighed. Thank you, I'm Luna. When she tried to help me stand, my palm punched through the soft ground beneath us. The hollow had a rotted floor, and we both fell through into a natural cave below. Tumbling, grabbing at each other, we landed in a heap in the darkness. Luna activated a light spell from a bracelet on her left wrist. In the warm glow, I got my first clear look at her. Cat ears on top of her head, brown and white, two-toned hair cut to her shoulders with a white streak above her forehead. Small build, bright, wide eyes. A simple outfit of durable short-sleeved top and shorts, designed for someone who moved fast. A thick tail wrapped around her waist like a belt. The cave continued deeper. Since the rain showed no signs of stopping, we decided to explore. Luna was enthusiastic. Her tail shot straight up, rigid with excitement, when she spotted the passage leading further in. She told me she was an adventurer. I flinched at the word, remembering the guild, but she didn't press. She just said she'd recently arrived in this city and had been fishing when the rain caught her. I told her my story, the merchant class, the party that treated me like a pack mule, the level that wouldn't rise, the months of eating weeds and sleeping on dirt, the way Drake took everything and gave nothing. Luna's expression changed as I spoke. Her ears flattened. Her breathing got sharp. She told me what they'd done was outrageous, that a porter doing dangerous work deserved real pay, that even the simplest laborer was owed wages. She was the first person in this world who'd been angry on my behalf. It was such a small thing, but small things are what drowning people hold on to. As we walked deeper, Luna's senses picked up what I missed, subtle signs that the cave floor had been smoothed by human hands long ago. The passage branched a few times, but stayed mostly linear. Then, it opened into a wide chamber, and the sound that met us there made both of us freeze, clinking, metal on metal. Thousands of tiny impacts, like someone had upended a vault. Luna's light spell revealed the source. Coins, a mountain of them, piled to the height of a house. Copper, bronze, the occasional glint of silver. As we stared, another coin dropped from above and bounced off the pile. I picked one up from the floor. Scratched into its surface was a crude letter, P. Now, that letter on that coin. Hold on to that. It's not a coincidence. The man who threw me away with nothing. His money is about to build everything I become. You'll see what I mean. I knew that handwriting. Drake had bragged about this in front of me once. He'd carved his initial into every coin he tossed into the wishing well in the Capitol Square. He said he didn't want his money accidentally granting someone else's wish. Even his superstitions were selfish. "This is the bottom of the wishing well," I told Luna. She wanted to take the coins. I hesitated. It felt like stealing from a shrine, but Luna shook her head and said something that stuck with me. She said money that sits unused can't fulfill its purpose. Coins exist to pass through hands, to buy food, to keep people alive. Leaving them in the dark forever wasn't honoring wishes. It was wasting them. I'd been called worthless enough times to understand what uselessness actually looked like. These coins, buried and forgotten, were more like me than I wanted to admit. I reached out and touched the pile. A voice echoed in my mind. Solemn, female, ancient, heard by me alone. That voice. I didn't know who she was, not yet, but she's going to keep showing up. And every single time she does, my life flips upside down. I grant thee a revelation. The revelation of currency exchange. The coins under my palm shifted. A basketball-sized cluster of copper dissolved and reformed into a single silver coin. It fell onto the pile with a clear, ringing tone, completely different from the flat clatter of copper. Luna's eyes went wide. She hadn't heard the voice, but she'd seen the silver appear from nothing. We spent the next hour converting the entire mountain, copper to silver, silver to gold. Centuries of forgotten wishes compressed into a fortune that fit in our hands. The chamber was nearly empty when we finished. I divided everything down the middle. Luna stared at me. "Half is yours," I said. "We found this together. You can really just give this away?" I know what it looks like when someone takes everything and gives nothing back. I lived it for months. I'm not starting my new life by being that person. Luna was quiet. Then, she clutched her share against her chest, right next to her bundle of fish, and nodded with her whole body. I could see the gratitude on her face, but more than that, respect. Like I'd passed some test she hadn't told me about. Before I go on, if you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. She taught me that pure gold coins were impractical. Gold is soft. Coins rub together and lose value. We kept our shares in lower gold alloy coins, about 100 each. In the currency I'd grown up with, we were each holding over 5 million yen. The rain was still pounding when we climbed back to the surface. I did something I'd never done for Drake's party. I took Luna to my room, my actual room. Through one of the few abilities I'd had since arriving in this world, I could step between worlds. One moment, we were standing in the rain-soaked forest. The next, we were in an 8-tatami Japanese-style room with a small kitchen, running water from a natural mineral spring, and a futon in the closet. I'd never shown this place to Drake's party. They'd never earned it. The spring water I'd given them came from here. They just never knew. Luna looked around, bewildered. Tatami mats under her bare feet, sliding doors, a ceiling she could touch on tiptoe. It wasn't much by any standard, but compared to sleeping on dirt with monsters circling, it was a castle. The divine voice returned the moment we stepped inside. A new revelation, the ability to pay public utility bills using this world's currency. I pulled the light cord hanging from the ceiling, and the bulb came on. Luna yelped. A navigation system, some kind of automated voice in my head. Female, mechanical, clearly trying to sound different from the divine voice, confirmed the details. When I pointed out she was obviously the same person who'd granted the currency exchange, there was a long pause, followed by a flustered claim that this was classified information, and then silence. She'd fled. I cooked Luna's fish while she took a bath, the spring-fed hot spring bath. In this world, a private drawn bath was a luxury that only nobles and wealthy merchants could afford. The water came from a natural hot spring, white and cloudy, rich with minerals, with healing properties that would have made any apothecary weep. Luna came running out of the bathroom, barely wrapped in a towel, water dripping everywhere, shouting that her scratches had healed the instant she touched the water. Every scrape, every bruise from the fall, gone. Pay attention to that water, what it does to wounds. That's just the beginning. Later in this story, it's going to save someone's life in a way nobody saw coming. She turned around to show me her hip, where she'd landed on a rock. Smooth skin, not a mark. I told her to please go put clothes on. She ignored me completely and kept pointing at the places where injuries used to be. We ate grilled fish together, sitting cross-legged on the tatami floor. I cut the fish into portions and seasoned mine with soy sauce. When Luna asked what the dark liquid was, I offered her a taste. Her ears shot straight up. Her tail unwrapped from her waist and stood at full attention. She drizzled it over everything on her plate and ate with the single-minded focus of a predator who'd found the perfect prey. Afterward, I laid out the futon for her. She refused to sleep in it unless I did too. I took the far edge, she took the other. By the time I came back from my own bath, she was curled up like a real cat, fast asleep, with a peace on her face that I envied. Luna told me I was amazing. She said it plainly, without embarrassment, the way she said everything. She pointed out what I should have already known, that outside this room, the rain was still falling. No fire could be lit. No shelter could be found without luck. No healer could mend wounds this quickly. No one would sleep this soundly in the wild, because there were always monsters, always insects, always the cold. She said the people who'd thrown me away didn't understand what they'd lost, that an adventurer who could provide rest, healing, hot water, and safety was worth more than 100 swordsmen. Nobody had ever laid it out like that for me. I didn't know what to say, so I just said thanks. When I pulled the futon from the closet and laid it out, Luna was watching. She'd never seen a futon before. The moment I said it was ready, she dove headfirst into it like a runner sliding into home plate. A gust of wind hit my face. She rolled around in the blanket, completely lost in the sensation, then caught herself and froze, embarrassed for the first time since I'd met her. She called it ofuton and asked if it was some kind of trap. I told her it was just a bed. She refused to let me sleep on the floor. I told her I'd buy another futon eventually. She insisted we could share if we each took an edge. I took the far side, she took the other. By the time I came back from my own bath, she was curled up like a real cat at her edge, fast asleep, with a peace on her face that I envied. That night was the first time since I'd arrived in this world that I felt warm, not from the hot spring, from something simpler than that. The next morning, Luna was sleeping on top of me, literally, chest first across my body like I was a heated cushion. She'd migrated across the entire futon in her sleep, drawn to warmth the way a real cat would be. I managed to roll her off. She woke up grumbling about 5 more minutes. We shared leftover fish for breakfast, and Luna discovered the toilet. The washlet function sent her sprinting out of the bathroom with her pants half down. I had to explain the concept of modern plumbing to a cat girl in another world. It was not the morning I'd imagined. Walking back through the forest together felt different from every journey I'd taken in this world before. The sun hit the wet leaves and scattered light everywhere. Luna's eyes kept darting to the reflections, her cat instincts tracking every sparkle. She talked about real adventuring, the parts the glory seekers never mentioned. Water management, rotation schedules for night watch, how combat was maybe 10 minutes out of a 12-hour day, and the rest was logistics, foraging, and raw endurance. When I told her my old party had made me do all the night watch alone while they slept, she stopped walking. Her ears went flat, her tail puffed out. "That's insane," she said. "Even in a real camp you rotate. Nobody keeps watch alone. If 100 coins came in, based on work hours alone, you'd deserve 99 of them. You're giving me too much credit. I'm giving you exactly enough." She poked my chest with one finger. "Anyone who feeds a group, carries their weight, guards them while they sleep, and finds safe water, that person holds the whole operation together. They just can't see it because they're too busy swinging swords." I thought about all those nights sitting alone in the dark while Drake snored. All those mornings hauling firewood nobody thanked me for. All those canteens of clean spring water I'd filled without being asked. She was right. But hearing it from someone else for the first time was strange. Like finding out a language you'd been speaking alone was real. Near a water source, I gathered catalyst mushrooms, a key ingredient for medicines. Luna mentioned there was a mimic rock nearby. I'd already put my hand on it. "Don't touch that," she said, grabbing my sleeve. "It's a monster." The stone shuddered. Thin limbs unfolded from its body. It leaped. Luna shoved me clear and faced it alone. What followed was extraordinary. She kicked the mimic rock, and it flew like a rubber ball. When it charged back, she slapped it out of the air with her open palm. The mineral spring water she'd been drinking had amplified her body to a level neither of us fully understood. But the creature's stone shell was harder than her fists. Her knuckles came away bruised and stinging. So, she adapted. Luna launched herself skyward, grappled the mimic rock at the peak of its jump, locked its limbs with her arms and legs, and drove it headfirst into a massive boulder below. The impact was like a cannon shot. Cracks raced across the creature's surface, and it crumbled into fragments that rained down around us. Then the boulder stood up, a second mimic rock, the size of a small shed. It had rolled down from the cliffs above during last night's rain and sat dormant in the forest, waiting. Luna was spent. I had no combat ability whatsoever. The thing fixed its stone eyes on us and charged. Luna planted her feet. She told me to run. She'd hold it for 1 second, maybe 2, long enough for me to escape. I ran, not away, at her. I hit her from the side at full sprint, wrapped my arms around her small frame, and threw us both clear of the monster's path. My shoe scraped against its body as it rolled past, missing us by inches. The creature's momentum carried it straight into the pond behind us. It couldn't swim. a monster that mimicked stone, crushing weight, anchoring it to the bottom, thrashing and sending bubbles to the surface. The thrashing slowed. The bubbles stopped. The water went still. "I think it's over," I said, breathing hard with Luna draped across my shoulder. "Don't say that," she mumbled. "In the adventuring world, that's a death flag." We watched. The giant mimic rock floated to the surface, dead. Its weight-increasing ability had failed with its life, and the fibrous body beneath the stone shell was lighter than water. I harvested everything. 2 magic stones, a dark obsidian gem from the smaller creature, and a transparent blue crystal the size of a melon from the giant. A magic crystal, Luna called the blue one. Rare, powerful, the kind used to run heavy magical equipment. The giant's fibrous innards could be spun into incredibly durable thread. Back home, I ran a hot bath for Luna and made her a recovery drink. Catalyst mushrooms ground with medicinal herbs, dissolved in spring water, sweetened with sugar. What this world dismissed as a basic first aid remedy, when combined with water that had extraordinary effects on this world's inhabitants. Luna drank it and something detonated inside her. She surged out of the bathtub in a pillar of steam, completely naked, fists clenched, radiating raw power that pressed against my skin like heat from an open furnace. She said it was a legendary potion. 1 sip, and her body was fully restored. No, stronger. As a beast folk, her species evolved through crisis. Surviving near death triggered exponential growth. The drink had catalyzed that leap. I told her to please sit back down in the water. She flexed one more time and finally complied. Later, she asked to share the bath. The tub was big enough for 6 people. There was a story behind that, which I wasn't ready to think about, so I figured it was fine. We sat on opposite ends, steam rising between us, and talked about nothing important. About fish, about the forest, about what her partner, someone she called her companion, might think of all this. She mentioned this partner could investigate why my level was stuck, that there might be answers. For the first time, the mystery of my level suppression didn't feel like a dead end. It felt like a door someone might actually open. That night, while Luna slept sprawled across my back, the divine voice spoke again. "I grant thee a new revelation, the revelation of investment." My laptop flickered on. A menu appeared. Upgrades I could purchase with earned currency, delivery boxes, supply systems. I ordered a weekly delivery service, fresh fish and supplies from my old world, arriving in a magical compartment installed in the apartment. My first order made it just before the weekly deadline. My status had changed. Months stuck at level 1, and now level 12. The sheer economic value generated by the currency exchange had been recognized by whatever system governed this world. It counted as growth, real growth. My stats inched upward across the board, still below average in raw strength, still no combat class, but I was no longer nothing. The next evening, Luna punched a wild boar so hard it flew 20 meters through the trees. She'd only meant to set a trap. Her face, when she turned back to me, dragging the carcass, was pure, bewildered joy. We ate boar and fish that night, soy sauce and spring water, a futon shared by 2 people who no longer pretended they needed the extra space. Outside the apartment, in a world that had tried to discard me, something was being built, not yet visible, not yet named, but real. Somewhere out there, Drake and his noble blood party were learning what life looked like without me. They'd fought those same mimic rocks and lost, twice. Their sorceress fired her greatest spell, and it barely fizzled. Their monk tried to lift a boulder and collapsed under its weight. Their priestess burned through her entire magical reserve healing scratches because her power had degraded to almost nothing. Without the spring water they'd been drinking from my supply, water they'd never thanked me for, never asked where it came from. Their abilities were draining away day by day. Let that sink in. The 4 people who called me useless. Their strength was built on something I gave them, and they never even knew it. That's the kind of irony this story runs on. Get used to it. They didn't even bring water bottles. They'd never carried their own water in their lives. That had been my job. They found a stream and drank from it. By nightfall, all 4 of them were crouching in separate bushes with stomach cramps, calling for the useless pack mule who wasn't there to answer. I didn't know any of this at the time. I wouldn't learn the details until later. But here's the thing about being thrown away by people who thought you were nothing. They don't realize what they've lost until it's already gone. And by then, what they lost has already become something they can never take back. The city looked different when you walked into it with someone beside you. Luna and I entered Ashford the next morning, side by side. 2 days ago, I'd left this place alone, penniless, with a bruised face and a destroyed guild card. Now, I was walking through those same streets with gold in my satchel and a cat girl who'd chosen me over solitude. The irony wasn't lost on me, but irony doesn't pay bills, and I was already running calculations. The fortune from the cave wouldn't last forever. Currency exchange, public utility payments, investment, powerful tools. but each one needed a situation to be useful. I couldn't just sit on gold and call it a plan. We're heading to the inn where I'm staying, Luna said, bouncing on her toes. I want you to meet my partner. I'd been curious about this partner since she'd mentioned them in the bath. Someone who might know why my level was stuck. Someone Luna trusted enough to call a companion. The inn was nicer than anywhere I'd ever stayed in this world. Luna went inside to find her partner, came back 30 seconds later with an apologetic look. She's out, but she won't have gone far. Wait in the plaza and I'll track her down. Before I could respond, Luna launched herself at a nearby building, stuck to the wall with both feet like an actual cat, then kicked off and sailed over the rooftop. She vanished across the skyline with a trail of wind behind her. I went to the plaza. It was a wide open space, the kind of public square where merchants set up stalls and children chased pigeons. I found a bench and sat for the first time in what felt like days. Just sat. No one screaming at me, no gear on my back, no schedule to keep. After months of being worked like a draft animal, the simple act of resting in the sun felt like a stolen luxury. That's when I noticed her, a woman crouching in the corner of the plaza, completely still, staring at the ground. Blonde hair so long it pooled over her shoulders like poured silk. I couldn't see her face. She wasn't moving. Something about the scene tugged at me. Was she sick? Injured? I approached carefully. "Excuse me, are you feeling all right? She didn't look up. "I'm fine." "Then, what are you doing?" "Watching over this sprout, waiting for it to bloom." I glanced down. A tiny green shoot, barely 2 centimeters tall, was poking through the packed earth at her feet. "How long until it flowers?" She leaned closer to the sprout, studying it with the intensity of a jeweler examining a diamond. Then she turned to face me. Long ears, pointed, elegant, an elf. Her face was the kind of beautiful that made you forget what you were about to say. Golden hair, framing features that looked carved rather than born, and her eyes, calm, ancient, curious, looking at me the way a scholar looks at an unfamiliar specimen. "Approximately 41 days from now," she said. "That's not soon at all." "Arya!" Luna's voice rang out behind me. She came sprinting across the plaza. "I've been looking everywhere. You were here this whole time?" "Luna, welcome back. You were only 2 days late." "Only?" Luna grinned at me. "Kai, let me introduce you. This is my partner, Arya. She's an elf." Arya stood. She was taller than Luna. Most people were, with a slender build and the kind of composure that made you lower your voice instinctively. "Hello, Kai," she said. "Nice to meet you." Luna explained the time difference while we stood there. Elves live nearly 1,000 years. Their perception of time warps accordingly. 10 days to an elf feels like 1 day to a human. So Luna, being 2 days late, registered to Arya as roughly 5 hours of waiting, and 41 days of watching a plant grow was barely 4 days in her internal clock. An observation diary that ends in less than a week. It made a strange kind of sense, and it told me something important about Arya. She didn't measure the world by the same scale as everyone else. The guild rankings, the social hierarchies, the snap judgments that had branded me worthless, those were built on human timelines. Arya thought in centuries. Someone who'd watched civilizations rise and fall wasn't going to dismiss a person based on a combat stat. "Join our party," Luna said. She said it right there in the plaza. No build-up, no ceremony. Just that bright, direct honesty of hers. "I already told you," I said. "I'm not even a registered adventurer anymore. My card was destroyed." "I know, don't care." "Luna, I can't fight." "Then we'll fight for you." She grabbed the front of my shirt and looked up at me with those fierce, unwavering eyes. "I handle close combat. Arya handles magic. You handle everything that keeps us alive. Supplies, shelter, the hot spring, medicine, strategy. That's not a weakness, Kai. That's what holds a party together." She'd thought this through. Every word was practiced, rehearsed in her head on the rooftops while she searched for Arya. I looked at Arya. "And you're fine with this?" "If Luna trusts you, I trust her judgment. I've traveled with her long enough to know she doesn't waste loyalty." That settled it, not with a grand declaration, with a rumble from Luna's stomach that echoed across the plaza. "Let's eat first," I said. "Fresh tuna should be waiting in the delivery box." I took them both to my room. Luna made a beeline for the futon and executed her signature head-first dive before I could stop her. Arya watched this performance with her usual calm expression, then walked over to the futon, whispered, "Au futon," and fell sideways into it like a tree in slow motion. She lay there for a moment, then rolled onto the tatami mats and pressed her cheek against the woven surface with something approaching religious reverence. "Grass, woven into flooring," she murmured. "Beautiful." I looked at Luna. "What do elves eat?" We had tuna sashimi. Luna devoured hers with the focus of a predator, pausing only to announce that raw fish with soy sauce was the greatest invention in any world. Arya ate toast with strawberry jam and declared it supreme. These two were fundamentally different in every visible way: species, temperament, fighting style, but underneath, they were cut from the same cloth. They both attacked food with complete sincerity. After lunch, Luna brought up the real reason she'd wanted me to meet Arya. Kai's level won't go up, she said, no matter how many monsters he defeats. Can you figure out why? Arya's eyes sharpened. She asked for paper, not parchment, but tree pulp paper, which was apparently rare and expensive in this world. I pulled a sheet from my printer. She accepted it without comment. Take off your shirt, she said. Why? The examination requires it. Just my shirt? Everything is acceptable. Recommended even. I'll keep my pants on, thanks. I lay face down on the futon. Luna curled up beside me like a cat supervising a medical procedure. Arya sat on my lower back, literally climbed on and straddled me like she was mounting a horse. She placed the paper flat against my skin and began chanting. The magic felt different from anything I'd experienced. A tingling warmth that started at my spine and spread outward, like fingers tracing the pathways of my body from the inside. Arya's voice dropped into a register I hadn't heard from her before. Focused, serious, ancient. Consultation, she announced and slapped her palm against the paper on my back. The sting shot through me like electricity. The results changed everything. There, on that single sheet, rendered in flowing script by her magic, was my complete profile. Not the abbreviated version the guild had scanned, the full picture. And next to my class, merchant, were two letters I'd never seen before. UL, ultimate, Arya said. Your aptitude as a merchant is at the highest possible tier, above S rank, above anything the standard scale measures. Ultimate, file that word away. You're about to watch what happens when a world built on swords discovers what an ultimate merchant can do. The room went quiet. Even Luna stopped fidgeting. The guild measured you with combat-oriented tools, Arya continued. Their appraisal reads physical stats, battle skills, magic potency. Measuring a merchant by those metrics is like judging a fish by how well it climbs a tree. Then why couldn't I level up? Because you can't level up through combat. Not at all. Your growth is exclusively tied to economic activity, earning, trading, creating value. The ultimate aptitude is extreme. It locks off every other growth path and channels everything through commerce. That's why killing goblins did nothing. That's why currency exchange triggered a jump to level 12. The money you generated was the first real growth stimulus your body had ever received. I stared at the paper. Level 12. Stats that had been climbing since the cave. A class that wasn't broken, just fundamentally different from what anyone around me had been trained to recognize. So I was never defective, I said. No, you were simply invisible to the people holding the wrong lens. Something loosened in my chest. Not anger, not vindication, just a knot I'd been carrying for months, pulled free. The guild hadn't found a worthless man. They'd found an extraordinary one and been too blind to see it. Drake hadn't expelled dead weight. He'd thrown away something he couldn't even comprehend. I didn't need revenge for that. The truth was enough. Luna pressed her forehead against my shoulder. Told you, she whispered. Told you he was amazing. The next day, we went into the forest as a party of 3. The dynamic clicked immediately. Luna took point, her senses scanning every direction at once. Ears rotating, nose twitching, tail rigid with alertness. Arya walked behind me, calm and measured, her magic ready but conserved. I was in the middle, the one without a sword, without spells, without any business being in a monster-infested forest, except I was the one who spotted the medicinal herbs, the one who recognized which mushrooms were catalysts and which were poison, the one tracking our supply consumption and calculating how long we could stay out before needing to resupply. Combat was 10 minutes in a 12-hour day. The other 11 hours and 50 minutes were logistics, and logistics was my language. Luna caught fish by kicking them out of a stream. Arya collected insect husks for medicine. Apparently, they were nutrient-rich, something about the shells containing concentrated compounds for tissue repair. I gathered vine herbs and catalyst mushrooms, building a mental inventory of what could combine into what. Then the air changed. Luna's ears flattened. Arya looked up from her collection. Something's coming, Luna said. It smells wrong, rotten, negative magical energy, Arya confirmed. Undead. Through the trees, 200 meters out. something floated, a mass of flesh and bone and spectral light, roughly spherical, the size of a small house. It drifted through the forest like a balloon made of corpses, a legion, an undead aggregate, hundreds of dead creatures fused into a single shambling horror, held together by a core of dark energy at its center. Luna's lip curled. I hate those things. Punching them just makes your hands slimy. Then this is my turn, Arya said. She stepped forward, pressed 2 fingers to her forehead, and began chanting. What happened next was unlike any magic I'd seen. Arya didn't use a standard spell formula. She rewrote the magic in real time, adjusting range, element, penetration depth, compensating for wind direction and the target's composition. Luna called it original magic, the ability to customize a spell's properties on the fly. No other mage could do this. It was Arya's alone. Distance 120 yards, headwind slight, no obstructions, firing position, perfect. Her fingertips blazed white. The forest lit up like noon in a midnight wood. Flash! A beam of concentrated light punched clean through the Legion's center, not just its surface, through the core, the dark nucleus that held the dead together. Cracks of light raced across the creature's body like fracture lines in glass. It held its shape for 1 heartbeat, 2, then dissolved, silently, completely. Hundreds of undead reduced to falling dust and scattered magic stones. I ran forward and collected every stone, dozens of them, small as fingernails, but numerous. A decent haul by volume, but the individual stones were worth little. I said as much while we rested back in my room, drinking mineral water sweetened with sugar. If only I could combine these into one large stone, I muttered, rolling a tiny crystal between my fingers. Same weight, 10 times the price. The solemn voice echoed in my mind, that familiar, ancient female tone. I grant thee a revelation, the revelation of synthesis. The bag of magic stones erupted in light. When it faded, a single crystal the size of a softball sat in my palm. A gem equivalent to killing a goblin king, worth hundreds of thousands of zenny. Then the world tilted sideways. My magic was 10 points. Synthesis consumed all of it, every last drop. My vision blurred, my legs gave out, and the last thing I felt was the tatami against my cheek. 10 points of magic, that's all I had. Tuck that number away, because the day that number grows, the things I can create get terrifying. I woke up in the futon. Luna was draped across my chest, sleeping. Arya was tucked against my left side, suspiciously close and suspiciously warm. Morning, she murmured. How long was I out? Through the night. Your magic was completely drained. The spring water helped you recover. The 3 of us bathed in the hot spring together. Luna's insistence, Arya's enthusiastic endorsement. The mineral water soaked into my body, and I felt the fog in my head clear minute by minute. Magical recovery through hot spring bathing. Another thing this room could do that nowhere else in this world could match. While they slept that night, I opened the laptop. The investment menu had expanded, not just delivery boxes anymore. I could spend earned money to increase my base stats directly. Strength, agility, vitality, dexterity, life force, magic power. Each point cost progressively more, but the returns were real. I dumped resources into all 6 categories, 10 points each, 330,000 zenny, more than half my remaining fortune, gone in one decision. But when I checked the results, every parameter had climbed. My magic had doubled from 10 to 20. Arya noticed the change the moment she woke. She could sense magical energy, the way Luna could sense predators. Your power grew overnight, she said. How? The merchant way. I bought it. She stared at me for a long time. Then something rare crossed her face. A smile. Not teasing, not analytical. Genuine. Fascinating, she said. In 1,000 years, I've never met anyone who grew stronger by spending money. The synthesized magic stone sat on the shelf beside my futon, glowing faintly in the morning light. A Goblin King's trophy created by a man who'd never swing a sword. The divine voice had given me 4 tools now: currency exchange, public utilities, investment, and synthesis. Each one appeared without explanation. Each one pushed me further down a path no one in this world had ever walked. Who was she, that voice? Why me? She never answered. She never stayed long enough to ask. But don't worry, she's far from done with me. Every time I think I've figured out the limits of what I can do, she shows up and tears those limits apart. I made breakfast for 3, tuna for Luna, toast and jam for Arya, boar, meat and bread for me. We sat around the low table in my 8 tatami room, a party that shouldn't have worked. A merchant with no combat ability, a cat-girl brawler, and a 1,000-year-old elf mage. But it did work. Every piece fit. I couldn't open a shop. The Merchant Guild required registration fees and a guarantor I didn't have. But I could sell at market stalls. I could synthesize materials. I could build one transaction at a time, the foundation of something larger. The path forward was clear now, not a straight line, not an easy one, but for the first time since arriving in this world, I could see it, and I wasn't walking it alone. Over breakfast the next morning, I told them the truth. Not all of it at first. It started small. Luna asked about the tuna, where it came from, how it arrived sealed in a plastic tray, why it tasted different from any fish she'd ever caught. Arya studied the packaging, ran her fingers over the Japanese text printed on the label. She looked at me and said nothing, but her eyes said everything. I need to tell you both something, I said, about where I'm from. Luna stopped chewing. Her ears rotated forward. My real name is Kai Bunsa. I'm not from this world. I'm a transferee from a place called Japan. The room went quiet, not the uncomfortable kind, the kind where people decide to listen with their whole body. I told them about my old life. I was 22. I'd graduated from a university in Tokyo and returned home to a hot spring town in the mountains of Kyushu. My great-grandmother had built a small lodging house there, a cheap place for long-stay visitors who came for the mineral baths, tatami rooms, a shared kitchen where local farmers would come by every few days to sell eggs and vegetables, a bathhouse that ran 24 hours on natural spring water, the kind of quiet, honest place where old women gathered around low tables to drink tea and watch sumo on a battered television. That was my inheritance. Not money, not land worth anything. Just an old building nobody used anymore, sitting a short walk from the government outpost where I was supposed to start work as a city employee. The region was high altitude, cool, foggy in the mornings. Military training grounds from the Meiji era sat 10 kilometers out. It was the kind of place where the wind cut through you even in March, but the hot springs made every cold night worth enduring. I'd moved in just days before my start date. The plan was simple: work at the outpost, live in the lodging house, take hot spring baths every night, visit my grandmother on weekends. A modest life, a good one. That room, Luna whispered, your room. It's that place. Yeah, that's the building. That's why there's a hot spring. That's why the tatami is worn in certain spots. People lived there for decades. Arya's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Understanding. The room wasn't magic. It was memory. Then came the part I didn't want to tell. A few days before my start date, I was sitting in my room when the earthquake hit. Not the rolling kind that passes in seconds. This one was deep, violent, close. My emergency alert never went off. The epicenter was too shallow, too near. The building shook until I couldn't stand. I dropped to my hands and knees on the tatami. Then the floor lurched and I was airborne, tossed like food in a wok. I hit something cold and hard, stone, not wood. When I opened my eyes, I was in a throne room. The emperor of the Crestfall Empire was sitting on a raised platform, an old, ugly man with dead eyes. He had a name that took over a minute to recite. I didn't bother remembering it. I called him trash in my head and moved on. A priest performed some kind of appraisal ritual, waving his hands around like a discount fortune teller. Long hair, a beard that nearly touched his collar, the kind of man who'd sell tap water as holy elixir back in Japan. He told me to think of a desired profession. I thought, merchant, not out of ambition, out of spite. I wasn't going to fight for the people who'd kidnapped me. If this was an RPG, the merchant was the one who survived by being useful, not by swinging a sword. Money solves problems. Money keeps you alive. When the results came back, merchant class. Weak stats across the board. Nothing useful for war. The emperor lost his mind. He'd just had his prime minister executed for speaking out of turn. Ran the man through with a dozen spears right in front of me, then killed a soldier who hesitated to join in. This was the ruler of the empire that had forcibly yanked me out of my life. And now he was pointing at me, screaming to have me cut down. Why didn't they kill you? Luna asked. Her voice was tight. A viscount spoke up. He told the emperor that killing transferees might curse future summonings. Superstition saved my life. The emperor agreed to exile me instead, tossed out of the castle like garbage, with nothing. No money, no knowledge of the world, no way to survive. And the viscount who'd spoken up, he appeared at the castle gates after the soldiers left. He offered to take me in, as a servant, for his son's party. His son, Arya said slowly. Drake. Neither of them said a word for a long time. Luna's tail had gone rigid. Arya's hands were folded in her lap, perfectly still. The silence held the shape of the thing I'd just told them, that I hadn't chosen this world, that a quiet life had been ripped from me, that the boy who'd beaten me and stolen my earnings was the son of the man who'd claimed to save my life. Luna moved first. She pressed the side of her face against my arm and stayed there. I understand now, Arya said quietly. The medicines, the products, the way you think about materials and formulas, that knowledge comes from your original world. Yeah, everything I know about chemistry, plants, manufacturing, it's all from Japan. Japan, from school, from growing up in a hot spring town surrounded by old people who knew every herb in the mountains. That was the answer laid bare. The reason I could do things no one in this world could replicate. Not talent, not divine blessing. 22 years of living in a civilization that had already figured out what this medieval world was still guessing at. That knowledge from Japan, tuck it somewhere safe, because it doesn't stop paying off, not even close. Arya's investigation into my level suppression had led here naturally. If my class was ultimate, if my growth was tied to commerce, then the question became obvious. Where did a merchant in a world of swords get the knowledge to build an empire? Now they knew. We finished breakfast. Nobody spoke about it again. They didn't need to. Something had settled between us, quiet and permanent, like a foundation poured in the dark. The next few days, we worked. Walking through the forest on our way back to Ashford, I noticed butterflies veering around a patch of low-growing plants. Not casually, they changed course sharply, like a pitcher's curveball, then resumed their path once clear. Something about that patch repelled them. Luna confirmed the smell. Strong, sharp, unfamiliar. Arya identified the plant as golden rooster chrysanthemum, a common weed that grew everywhere except deep winter. Not a medicinal herb, not food anyone wanted, worthless by this world's standards. But I remembered something from home. Mosquito coils, pyrethrum. The insecticide was derived from chrysanthemum compounds back in Japan. If this plant made butterflies flinch, it might contain something similar. I collected a bundle and ground it into paste in a small mortar back in my room. Split it 3 ways. First batch, pure. Second batch, mixed with catalyst mushroom. Third batch, catalyst mushroom, plus hot spring water. Arya dried all 3 with magic. We took them to a drainage ditch in town where flies swarmed over sewage. The first sample drove the flies away. The second knocked them out of the air. The third killed them on contact. Instant death, no twitching. Mosquito coil achieved, I said, and we just invented the world's first insecticide. Arya grabbed my hand with a grip that shouldn't have belonged to someone that slender. Her eyes were burning. "Come with me," she said, and dragged me across the city. She'd been sitting on an offer from the Berryellopu Trading Company, a quest to exterminate cartoon bows, dove-sized venomous bees that had infested a commercial apiary. Their stingers could kill a human. The guild had posted the quest and nobody had accepted it. Now Arya had a reason to say yes. We prepared. Mass-produced mosquito coils from crushed chrysanthemum, catalyst mushroom, pine bark for smoke volume, and hot spring water. Made a repellent paste from the same mixture, thinned with water, and rubbed it on our skin. Offensive and defensive. The coils would kill. The paste would keep them off us. The reward was 10 million zeni, double the original offer, because the Berryellopu merchant had expected to claw some back by selling us discounted honey. In this world, honey was a luxury item. A jar the size of a tangerine cost what most people earned in a month. Elves were known to love sweets. He'd set the trap perfectly. We declined the honey. He couldn't understand why. He didn't know I had a squeeze bottle of the stuff in my room, imported from Japan for a few hundred yen. The apiary mission itself took less than 5 minutes. Luna sprinted to the base of the hive tree under Arya's physical enhancement buff, scattered lit coils in a ring around the trunk, and ran back. The smoke did the rest. Cartoon bows dropped like overripe fruit. Not one got close enough to sting. The site manager watched from behind a shuttered window, mouth open, saying nothing. We collected the dead bees. Each one yielded a magic stone and a venomous stinger, a perfect arrowhead shape with barbed edges that prevented removal. The stingers were beautiful weapons with one fatal flaw. The poison contaminated whatever they hit, making hunted meat inedible, and the stingers themselves too dangerous to handle safely. The divine voice came again that night, granting me extraction, the ability to pull specific compounds out of materials. I used it on the stingers. The venom flowed out like black syrup, collecting in a clean jar. What remained was a pure, poison-free arrowhead, hard, barbed, ready to mount on a shaft. The perfect product for any hunter or archer who'd ever wanted cartoon bow precision without cartoon bow death risk. Navices also came fully online, no longer just a voice that appeared during skill revelations, but a persistent system running in my head. It could confirm whether an extraction was complete, suggest ingredient combinations, identify unknown materials. A walking encyclopedia of this world's natural resources, available 24 hours a day, for a daily fee of 1,000 zeni. Of course it wasn't free, nothing ever is, but the value was immediate. Navices pointed me to a fungus called decay mushroom, something that looked edible, but had the unique property of reducing any compound's potency to near zero. Apply it to cartoon bow venom with hot spring water, and lethal toxin became a mild antidote serum, poison into cure. The same principle Japanese pharmacists used to derive medicine from snake venom. This world had the materials, it just didn't have the perspective. I took 20 to the Hunters Guild and demonstrated by dropping one into a glass of water with a live minnow. The fish swam. I pricked my own arm with another. The receptionist screamed. I smiled. A hunter in the crowd bought 20 on the spot at 10,000 zeni each. Then, 5 more hunters lined up. 50 stingers sold in minutes. Outside the guild, a man in a turban approached me. A monkey beastman named Hiyushi, a hunter who wanted to buy but needed to see the product work first. He said he'd save up and find me at the next free market day, 3 days out. Then, he ran into the forest to gather herbs for cash. That interaction taught me something. The demand existed. The trust didn't, yet. I needed a place where people could find me, see the products, and decide at their own pace. A shop, or the closest thing I could manage without a merchant guild registration. On market day, I set up my first stall, a rented 2-tatami space in the free market square. Luna wove grass mats from forest reeds. I laid out products with hand-painted signs, pop displays, like the ones in every drugstore back in Japan, cartoon bow stingers, mosquito coils for home use. The formula dialed down so it killed flies and mosquitoes without being lethal to everything in the room. Medicines I'd developed using Navisis's guidance. An antidote made from cartoon bow venom, processed through decay, mushroom, and hot spring water. A vitality tonic. Standard field potions, vastly improved by using catalyst mushroom and hot spring water in the formulation. And a currency exchange service, 4% fee, for vendors drowning in copper coins. The sign read, Kinokuniya, convenient medicine shop. Currency exchange available. Sales were slow at first. Nobody buys medicine from a stranger on a grass mat. I knew that. The point wasn't volume, it was presence, visibility, being there so that when someone did need what I sold, they'd remember where to find it. Hiyushi showed up with exactly 50,000 zeni in mixed coins, some of them barely worth the metal. He'd counted every single one. I respected that. He picked 5 stingers, paid in full, and was about to introduce himself properly when a crash rang out across the square. A merchant's cart had lost its load. Crates tumbled into the crowd. A dog beastman girl, Hiyushi's little sister, Hiyasa, took a crate to the head and went down. Blood ran from her forehead. She wasn't moving. Hiyushi screamed her name. The crowd surged, and the merchant responsible, a fat man in expensive clothes, standing beside his overloaded cart, didn't even look at the girl. He was yelling at his laborers about the damaged cargo. His name was Carlogo Swoon, head of the Swoon Trading Company, connected to nobility, connected to the city guard. The kind of man who could hit a child with his negligence and face 0 consequences because the system was built to protect people like him. I ran to Hayasa with my best potion, the one Navisis had called the most effective formulation I could produce. Young Baminka herb shoots, ground with catalyst mushroom, honey, and hot spring water. I poured half the bottle over her wound. The gash sealed in seconds. No scar. Her eyes opened. She sat up. The crowd gasped. Then, Carlogo noticed. He pointed at me and offered 100 million, no, 1 million zeni for the potion, generously, as if doing me a favor. The crowd knew better. They just watched that potion do what his company's top shelf product couldn't. His store sold a special grade elixir for 10 million zeni, and it couldn't heal this cleanly. He knew the value. He was trying to steal it. The first thing you should do is apologize, I told him. You drove a cart piled with garbage through a crowded market. You hurt a child, and you haven't said one word about it. The crowd erupted. Finally, someone had said it. Carlogo called us insects. Every person in the square, insects. Said our lives weren't worth a single zeni. Said he had no reason to apologize to vermin. Hiyushi nearly hit him. The crowd wanted to riot, but Carlogo had connections, and everyone knew it. Nobody could touch him. Then his cart ropes snapped. Aria, a silent wind blade, invisible, untraceable, shaving the fibers until they parted on their own. The entire load collapsed onto Carlogo. Bones broke. He lay face down in the dirt, compound fractures in his leg and arm, whimpering for help. Nobody moved to assist. The insects, it turned out, had no interest in saving him. He looked at me, begged, offered 1 million. I told him the first million was the girl's medical bill, already owed, already collected. Now he needed a second bottle, for himself. He offered 10 million. The crowd shouted him down. I crouched beside him so only he and the nearest bystanders could hear. You said our lives are worth less than yours. Fine, then put a price on your life, the one that matches how valuable you think you are. If I don't like the number, I walk away, and you heal the hard way. He offered 30 million. I took 3 gemstones worth 10 million each. Arya verified them with a glance. I placed the potion on the ground in front of his face and told him to figure out the bottle cap himself. Then I walked back to my stall. That negotiation, by the way, people heard about it. And when word travels in a medieval economy, it doesn't fade, it compounds. Behind me, his laborer, the one he'd called garbage, whose name he didn't know, kicked him in the face, stole the potion, and ran. The crowd cheered. Not one person moved to stop the man or help Carlogo. Was it cruel? Maybe. A child was bleeding, and I could have healed her and walked away. I could have been the hero who asked for nothing. But I'd spent months having my value stolen. Months of working for free, being told my skills were worthless, watching people take what I'd earned and laugh about it. I wasn't going to let another rich man decide what my medicine was worth. The girl was healed. The bill was paid by the man whose negligence caused the injury. And if the price was steep, good. Maybe the next merchant who drove carelessly through a crowded market would think twice. That's what a merchant does. He assigns value, and he collects. By the end of market day, total sales hit 40 million zeni, the potion gems, the stinger sales, the mosquito coils. A single innkeeper bought the entire stock after testing one in her kitchen. The currency exchange service alone covered the stall rental. People who'd watched the Carlogo incident came looking for that miracle potion. Word traveled fast. Back in my room that evening, the 3 of us sat under a blanket around the low table, counting gemstones and coins. 4 gems worth 10 million each. 12,000 zeni in cash and change, a fortune by any measure. Luna and Arya refused their share of the potion money. You made it, Luna said. The ingredients we gathered are worth a few hundred zeni at best. The 40 million happened because of what you did with them. Besides, Arya added, pressing against my back, you grow stronger the more you earn. It's better for all of us if you keep it. They asked me to take care of them instead. Feed them, house them, provide. In return, they'd fight, gather, support. A family arrangement, not a business split. Luna brought her only belongings to this room in a single rucksack. This wasn't a temporary stay. She'd moved in. Don't make me a stray cat, she said, looking at me with an expression that made the word no physically impossible. I wouldn't dream of it. Stray elves are also unacceptable, Arya murmured from behind. Absolutely prohibited. The divine voice came once more, quietly, like an afterthought. My currency exchange skill leveled up. Level 2 allowed me to convert gemstones directly into cash, bypassing the 20% fee that jewelers and trade guilds normally charged. A 10 million zeni gem produced 12.5 million in gold coins. Arya fed me magic power to repeat the process. 4 gems became 50 million zeni. I spent it all that night. Every coin, 22.5 million on base stat increases, pushing all 6 parameters to 20. The escalating cost per point now 5 times what it had been before. 5.5 million on a new combat skill, evasion, initial level, max to level 10. Not for fighting, for surviving. If a shelf fell or a customer threw a punch, I'd rather dodge than die. The rest went into professional skills, herbalism, pharmaceutical techniques, alchemy, the building blocks of a real medicine business, not just campfire remedies. Navices confirmed each purchase with characteristic enthusiasm and questionable sound effects. A medicine business. That's what I called it then. What it becomes? You're not ready for that word yet. When I closed the laptop, the money was gone, all of it. But the stats were real, the skills were real, and the path was clearer than ever. Meanwhile, somewhere in the forest outside Ashford, noble blood was stumbling through their 4th consecutive day of being lost. They'd encountered the carcass of the giant mimic rock that Luna had killed, saw it split open like a boiled egg sliced with a knife. They couldn't figure out who'd done it. Drake could barely handle 2 goblins now. His enchanted hatchet bounced off everything. Zara's magic fizzled without her amplifying staff. Celeste couldn't cast recovery spells. Garen was the only one still standing, and even he could only manage to scare enemies away with sheer size. They decided to recruit whoever had killed the mimic rock, add them to the party, or enslave them as a servant, the way they'd done with me. They started heading back to the city to search. It took them another full day to find their way out of a forest that was an hour's walk from town. I didn't know any of this. I was in my room, full from the hot spring, warm under the blanket, a cat girl on my chest and an elf at my side, dreaming about pharmaceutical formulas and profit margins. The worthless bug was building an empire. The noble blood was crawling home in the dirt. Keep your eyes on that gap between us, because every single day from here, it gets wider, and the faster I climb, the harder they fall. The inversion had begun, and I was just getting started. Getting started meant getting organized. I woke up the morning after that 50 million zeni investment with 0 cash, maxed stats, and 2 girls who wouldn't let me stand up. Luna had wrapped herself around my torso like a seatbelt, legs locked around my waist, chin on my shoulder. Arya had drifted over from her side of the futon and was pressing against my front, murmuring something about jam. "Next free market," Luna said into my ear. "What are we selling?" "Haven't decided yet." "Potions again?" Arya's eyes opened, slowly, like a predator who'd heard the word dinner. She settled herself onto my lap and started pushing closer. "Off," I said. "I'm comfortable. I can't breathe. Breathing is optional. Cuddling is mandatory. If you two don't behave, no strawberry jam at breakfast." Luna launched off my back so fast, she hit the ceiling, caught the rail with her fingers, ran 3 steps across it upside down, dropped, and landed cross-legged beside the tea table. Arya floated backward with a half rotation, touched down silently on the opposite side. Both sat in perfect seiza, hands folded, eyes wide, obedient as temple monks. "You're terrifying," I said. "Both of you." "Jam," they said in unison. It was absurd. An ancient elf and a cat-eared warrior, domesticated by a single jar of Aohata strawberry preserves. But watching them sit there, expectant, loyal, ridiculous, something warm settled in my chest. This was what I was building for. Not wealth, not revenge. This. The first problem was logistics. I had products people wanted, medicines, mosquito coils, now the cotton candy idea forming in my head. But the free market only happened every 5 days, and my stall was tiny. To scale up, I needed 2 things: guild membership and a way to move goods without hiring porters. Guild membership came first. The Merchant Guild operated out of a stone building near the trade quarter, cleaner than the Adventurer Guild, quieter, smelling of ink and parchment instead of sweat. A receptionist handed me a questionnaire: background, specialties, references. I filled it out honestly. Former adventurer, pharmaceutical products, insecticides, currency services. No references, unless you counted a monkey beastman hunter and 60 satisfied customers who'd eaten cloud candy. The evaluation took a week. I passed, barely. Provisional membership, enough to book market stalls and access trade listings, but not enough for the courier network or warehouse facilities, which brought me to the porter problem. Moving goods meant hiring carriers. The guild's porter system was built for combat parties, hauling monster parts. Expensive, specialized, completely wrong for a merchant selling medicine jars. I tried recruiting freelancers. Nobody wanted to work with a low-level, no-name merchant. The Porter Guild quoted me 1,000,000 zenny for 10 days, just for walking beside me while I pushed a cart. So I stopped trying to fit into a system that wasn't built for me. I'd done that once before, in a nobles party. Never again. The answer came from a metal box that appeared in the corner of my room, the delivery locker. I'd purchased it during my investment spree, almost as an afterthought. In Japan, these were everywhere. Apartment lobbies, convenience stores, train stations. You ordered something, it showed up in a locker. You grabbed it when convenient. No couriers needed. Navices helped me configure the magical version. I could stock a locker with products, and buyers who'd placed orders at the free market could retrieve them on their own schedule. No porter, no middleman, no 1,000,000 zenny escort fees. Just a box, a location, and trust. It wasn't revolutionary by Japanese standards, but in a medieval economy where every transaction required a face-to-face handoff and hired muscle to guard the cargo, it was lateral thinking nobody here had considered. I mapped out 3 drop-off points. 1 near the market square, 1 near the Adventurer Guild for stinger orders, 1 near the residential quarter. 3 boxes, 0 ongoing labor costs. The porter problem was solved, not by finding better porters, but by making porters unnecessary. That little delivery box idea, file it away, because what starts as a convenience becomes something that changes the way this entire economy moves. The second free market day arrived, and I had a new weapon. Luna carried the brass wash basin to our stall. Arya warmed up her fingers, and I set up the sign I'd been thinking about since that morning with the golden wash basin. New sensation. Have you ever wanted to eat a cloud? Cotton candy, spun sugar, a concept so basic in Japan that every festival stand sold it for 300 yen. Here, nobody had seen anything like it. The process was simple in theory, impossible without Arya. I dropped a spoonful of granulated sugar into the center of the wash basin. Arya generated a precise vortex of heated wind, not a blast, not a gust, but a controlled spiral that melted the sugar into liquid, then flung it outward in microscopic threads. As the threads cooled, they solidified into gossamer strands. I gathered them onto a wooden stick, twisting and layering until a cloud formed. White, fluffy, impossibly light. Luna and Arya ate the first one. The demonstration was deliberate. Let the crowd see 2 beautiful women losing their minds over spun sugar, and curiosity would do the rest. It worked. Lily, Arthur's granddaughter, tried a small piece and shrieked with joy. That was the tipping point. Adults don't trust advertising, but a child's unscripted delight is the most powerful marketing on any planet. We sold out in under 2 hours. 3 kilograms of sugar, 500 zenny per stick, gone before the lunch rush. The crowd begged for more. I promised to return in 10 days and raise the price to 1,000. But the real value wasn't the cotton candy money. It was foot traffic. People who came for the cloud candy noticed the medicine stall. They bought ointments, coil bundles, antidotes. Cotton candy was the hook. Medicine was the revenue. 20,000 zenny in candy. Over 200,000 total for the day. Not bad for a man who'd been penniless 72 hours ago. Arthur threw out his back 10 minutes before the market opened. He was lifting a log section, a demonstration piece he used as a seat for Lily and as raw material for on-the-spot commissions. It wasn't even that heavy, but he was old. The morning was cold, and backs don't care about pride. I heard the sound, a wet, grinding pop that made Luna's ears flatten. Arthur froze in a half crouch, trembling, sweat already beading on his forehead. Lily ran to him, calling out. The crowd that had gathered for my cotton candy demonstration was watching. Luna, support his right side. Arya, lay down a mat. We eased him onto his stomach. I pulled out a shell container, the mint compound ointment I'd formulated for muscle inflammation. Cool on contact, deep penetrating, with catalyst mushroom and hot spring water boosting the active compounds. I applied it to his lower back and waited. 3 minutes. His trembling stopped. 5 minutes. He exhaled. 10 minutes. He sat up and rolled his shoulders like nothing had happened. What the hell was that? He said. My back. It's completely fine. Just ointment. You should keep the rest. Thrown backs have a habit of coming back. He stared at me like I'd performed surgery with a butter knife. Then his eyes went to Lily, who was still clutching his sleeve with tears drying on her cheeks. You're right, he said quietly. Can't be worrying her like that. That was how I met Arthur Bushi, master woodworker, the man every craftsman in the artisan quarter knew by name. His granddaughter Lily called him a Mako, a master craftsman, spoken in the clumsy syllables of a child who didn't know the weight of the word but meant every letter. Remember his drinking though? That detail about the cold morning and the thrown back? It's covering for something worse, and when it catches up to him, it won't be his back that breaks. He insisted on repaying me. I told him I had a better idea than payment. The next day, I visited Arthur's workshop in the artisan quarter. His house doubled as his workspace. Tools on every wall, wood shavings on the floor, the smell of fresh cut cedar everywhere. The chair he offered me was perfectly balanced. No wobble, no creak. Every joint fitted without visible gaps. I unrolled the graph paper I'd drafted the night before. 2 designs. The first was a mobile stall, a folding cart with 2 vertical columns connected by a retractable work surface and an overhead canopy. The columns were hollow, drawer compartments for storing products, tools, and cash. When collapsed, it was a narrow-wheeled cabinet you could push through an alley. When deployed, it became a full vendor station with display space, a cooking surface, and overhead shade. I'd even made a paper model from graph paper cutouts. Arthur turned it over in his hands, pulled the sections apart, pushed them together. His eyes narrowed with professional interest. Folding mechanism, he muttered. The table slides into slots in the columns, and the top shelf locks it rigid. Clever. I've never seen anything like this. The second design was simpler. Display shelving for the delivery lockers, a way to present products at the pickup points, so customers could see what was available even when I wasn't there. I'll pay for materials and labor, I said. Fair rates, and I'll keep supplying you with back ointment for free. You had me at the folding cart, he said. This is the most interesting commission I've had in years. Lily tugged my sleeve as we were leaving. You'll come back, right? Promise? Promise, she smiled. The kind that had no strategy behind it, no angle, just a child who'd found someone she trusted. I walked back through the artisan quarter, thinking about infrastructure, the delivery box network, the folding stall, the guild membership, Arthur's craftsmanship. None of these were flashy. None of them would make a story anyone told in a tavern, but they were the bones of something real. Between market days, we lived. I cooked. French toast from imported bread and eggs, tuna sandwiches that made Luna vibrate with happiness, rice balls wrapped in nori that Arya ate with suspicious reverence, picking each grain off her fingers like it was sacred. The kitchen in my Japanese apartment wasn't big, but it had everything. A gas stove, running water, and a delivery locker that could bring ingredients from a world that knew how to feed people. Luna discovered the kotatsu. She crawled under the heated table, curled into a ball, and didn't emerge for 6 hours. When I finally lifted the blanket, she blinked up at me with an expression of pure, undiluted bliss. "I live here now," she announced. "You already live here." "I live here now," she said, patting the kotatsu floor. Specifically, Arya set up shiitake mushroom cultivation in the bathroom. I'd ordered log sections inoculated with mushroom spores from Japan. The hot spring's constant humidity made the bathroom an ideal growing environment. She cast a dryad blessing on the logs, a spirit invocation that encouraged plant growth. Within days, the first caps were pushing through the bark. "This is remarkable," she said, examining them. "Cultivated mushrooms. In your world, this is common? Every grocery store sells them. Your world is terrifying," she said, in the best way. The mushrooms weren't just food. Certain varieties could be dried and used as catalyst components in my medicines. A self-renewing supply chain right in my bathroom. Arya tended them with the focused intensity of someone who'd found religion. The three of us settled into a rhythm. Mornings, gathering, crafting, preparing stock. Afternoons, planning, experimenting with new products, mapping the delivery network. Evenings, cooking, eating, talking. Luna would lean against my side. Arya would sit across the table, occasionally saying something that was either deeply philosophical or deeply inappropriate. Sometimes both. It was domestic. It was warm. It was everything I'd lost when the earthquake ripped me out of Kyushu. Navises continued its daily briefings. 2,000 zeni a day for guidance that was worth 10 times that. The system tracked my economic activity like a stock ticker. Transactions, skill usage, market trends. It noticed patterns I couldn't. One evening, after I'd converted a batch of rubies through currency exchange, the divine voice spoke again. Not Navises, the deeper one. The one that had granted me every revelation since that first day in the forest. A new skill tier, Ascension. I didn't understand it yet. Navises couldn't fully explain it either, only that it represented a threshold. My sustained commercial activity had crossed some invisible line. The system wasn't rewarding a single windfall. It was recognizing a pattern, consistent creation, consistent trade, consistent growth. The merchant class wasn't about getting rich once. It was about building something that kept generating value, and I'd finally proven I could do that. Ascension. That word sounds like a milestone. It's not. It's a warning sign. The system doesn't hand you a new tier because things are about to get easier. I sat in the dark for a while after the notification faded. Luna was asleep on my chest, purring softly. Arya's hair pooled across the futon like spilled gold. The delivery locker hummed quietly in the corner. Through the window, the distant lights of Ashford glittered. Everything was in place. Guild membership, delivery network, a craftsman ally, a diversified product line, a family that fought for me, and a home that felt like home. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet alarm was sounding. Things were going too well. In every story I'd ever read, the calm before the storm was exactly this. Warm, golden, perfect. The kind of peace that made the fall hurt more. I pulled Luna a little closer. Arya stirred and reached for my hand in her sleep. Whatever was coming, I'd face it with full pockets and a full house. That was more than I'd had in any life, on any world. The foundation was built. Now came the test. The test came on a Tuesday, or whatever they called it here, a nothing day, a day for gathering herbs by a creek. Luna had suggested the trip. There was a gorge upstream from our usual forest route, rocky terrain, different ecosystem, fish she couldn't get anywhere else. We had 6 days until the next free market. No deadlines, no obligations, just a day outside the apartment with sunlight on our faces and the sound of moving water. I packed light, crossbow, bolts, the Bowie knife on my vest, gathering bags. Arya brought nothing but herself, which meant she brought everything. Luna carried her curved kukri and a grin wide enough to split her face. It should have been peaceful. We'd been gathering for maybe 3 hours when Luna's ears went flat. Something's coming. 3 goblins, squat, ugly, carrying a battered wooden bucket. They were heading for the creek to draw water, walking in formation, not wandering. I raised the crossbow and took all 3 before they knew we existed. The snipe skill guided each bolt clean through the skull. 3 shots, 3 kills, no alarm raised. Luna extracted the magic stones. Arya opened a pit, and I dumped the bodies for burning. Routine, efficient. The kind of kill that doesn't raise your pulse because it's over before your brain processes danger. Then, Luna's ears moved again. 6 more, spread out, searching. They came because the first 3 hadn't returned. 6 goblins sent to find 3. That ratio bothered me, but I didn't think about it yet. We set an ambush at the cremation site. Let them find the fire, cluster around it. Arya opened with magic missile, dropping the 2 on the flanks. I put a bolt through the mouth of the one who tried to shout. Luna tore through the rest like a circular saw through plywood. 9 goblins dead, 0 casualties. We cleaned up, burned the remains, and went back to gathering herbs. That's when Arya said the thing that changed the day. Something feels wrong. She was crouched beside a rock, drying specimen samples with wind magic, and her voice had that particular flatness it got when she was thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone. 9 goblins sent to fetch water, 3, then 6 to search for the 3. That's organized. Goblins don't organize. They scatter, they swarm, they panic. Someone is giving them orders. The hobgoblins? No, something above them, a king. I didn't want to hear that word. Not here, not now, not 6 days before market day, with a delivery network to stock and mushrooms to harvest. A goblin king? Possibly worse. The sunlight didn't feel as warm after that. Luna heard the fighting first. She'd wandered downstream to fish and came sprinting back with her catch in one hand and alarm in her voice. Someone's in a battle, that way. We stowed our supplies, fish into a vinyl bag, bags into the room, and moved fast, not a sprint, a sustainable pace. You don't arrive at someone else's fight gasping for air. That's how you join the casualty list. The scene was worse than I expected. A carriage, or what was left of one, surrounded by goblins. Not a dozen, not 2 dozen, a sea of them, armored, coordinated, pressing inward on a knot of human fighters who were losing badly. I could see weapons rising and falling behind the goblin wall, hear the desperate rhythm of people fighting for their lives. What do we do? I asked. Help them, Luna said. Same, said Arya. No debate, no cost-benefit analysis. Just help them. I handed Luna a stamina potion. Arya cast potential release. 5 times normal physical output now. She'd gotten stronger since I last asked. Luna's body shimmered with pale light. Ready? Arya asked. Go. Arya stepped into the open and raised both hands. Airstorm. The spell hit the goblin mass like an invisible wood chipper. Bodies came apart, limbs separated. A corridor of devastation opened through the rear ranks before a single one of them knew we were there. Luna exploded into the gap. She kicked the rearmost goblin so hard it became a projectile, bowling over 4 more. Then she was spinning, that tornado technique with the kukri, carving a straight line through flesh and bone. I followed with the crossbow, picking off anything that turned to look. Lightning! Arya's voice cut through the chaos. A white lance of electricity pierced 6 goblins in a line, dropping them like dominoes. Second shot, third, fourth, each one punching through packed ranks. The goblins started to panic. Lightning! Burst! She raised both hands overhead. The air crackled. Her hair whipped sideways in a wind that existed only around her. Then she brought her arms down, and a sphere of concentrated lightning arced into the densest cluster of untouched goblins. It detonated on impact. Not a bolt, but a bomb. Radial discharge, 20 kills minimum. The stench of ozone and scorched flesh rolled over me in waves. From the carriage side, I heard a woman's voice ring out. We are grateful for the assistance. Please, lend us your strength a moment longer. Clear, commanding. The voice of someone used to being obeyed, even while covered in goblin blood. We fought inward, they fought outward. The gap closed. Luna ripped through the remaining goblins without potential release. It had worn off, but she didn't need it for these. I targeted the hobgoblins, the squad leader-sized ones, and dropped 2 with precise bolt clusters to the throat. Arya took a third with an air slash that separated head from shoulders. The goblin army was breaking, leaderless, terrified, scattering. Arya's voice cut through the noise. Why aren't they running? Goblins always run when the fight turns. She was right. The formation was collapsing. The hobgoblins were dead. And still, the rank and file milled around instead of scattering into the trees, like they were waiting, like they were more afraid of what was behind them than what was in front. And then something that was not a goblin destroyed the carriage with a single blow. It stepped through the wreckage like a man walking through a beaded curtain, 2 meters tall, shoulders wider than a doorframe, muscles layered on muscles, skin like boiled leather, tusks jutting from a jaw that could bite through chainmail. In one hand, a club the size of a telephone pole, carved from a single tree trunk, dark with old stains. Goblin King, Arya whispered. Every goblin on the battlefield stopped moving, not retreating, not regrouping, freezing, like dogs hearing a master's footstep. Whatever control had kept them from scattering suddenly made sense. They hadn't been fighting out of courage. They'd been fighting because running from this was worse than dying to us. The word didn't do it justice. This thing was beyond anything we'd faced, beyond the mimic rock, beyond every monster in every forest we'd walked through. Its presence landed on my chest like a physical weight. A woman in white armor lunged at it from behind the wreckage, black ponytail streaming, stone spear driving for the throat. A a perfect strike, the kind that ends fights before they begin. The Goblin King swatted the spear aside with its club, casually, like brushing away a fly. The woman stumbled, and the creature flung a chunk of wrecked carriage at her. She rolled clear, barely. Arya fired lightning, direct hit. The bolt disintegrated, sparked, and vanished a meter from the creature's skin like it had hit an invisible wall. Magic resistance, she said. Complete. My attacks won't reach it. But the spear girl's attack, it blocked physically, meaning physical attacks can hurt it. The woman in white armor, the Princess Knight, was trading blows with it now, or trying to. Her spear could barely scratch its hide. She was fast, skilled, courageous. But the thing was faster than something that size had any right to be. 4 armored soldiers threw themselves between it and the princess, shields raised. The club swung once, horizontally. I won't describe what happened to them. I'll say that the sound was wet and that none of them moved afterward. Luna went in. Arya recast potential release. A flying kick to the jaw rocked the creature's head sideways, but the damage was superficial. Luna became a blur of strikes and retreats, carving small wounds that bled but didn't slow it. The Princess Knight flanked, probing for weak points. Neither could land a killing blow. The magic is going to wear off, Arya said from beside me. Her voice was tight. When it does, Luna can't match its raw power. The pale light around Luna's body flickered, dimmed, died. Her speed dropped. The Goblin King noticed. It caught her mid-retreat with a backhand that sent her tumbling across the rocky ground. She landed in a cat-like crouch, arms crossed over her chest, visibly hurt. I fired. The bolt hit the creature's temple and stuck, barely, embedded in the skin, stopped by bone. Again, Arya said. She was pressed against my back, her hands over mine on the crossbow. Shoot, arrow. Her wind magic wrapped the second bolt. It flew faster, harder, and struck the first bolt like a hammer hitting a nail, drove it deeper. Blood began to flow from the wound. Third shot, another bolt, another impact. 3 bolts stacked end to end, driven into the creature's skull like a siege weapon's payload. The Goblin King staggered. Its eyes lost focus. I threw Luna a recovery potion. She caught it, drank, poured the rest over her body. The hot spring water surged through her system. I'd seen this before. Her ability to power up after taking critical damage. She'd nearly died fighting the Mimic Rock and come back stronger. The same thing was happening now. Luna launched herself at the Goblin King's face. One jump, one back fist. The sound of its skull caving in was like stepping on a watermelon. It fell sideways, dead before it hit the ground. The Princess Knight was standing only because her spear held her up. Her white armor was cracked and filthy. Blood that wasn't hers streaked across the chest plate. She was young, maybe 18, with black hair tied in a ponytail and features that belonged on a coin. Even exhausted, even beaten, she radiated the kind of bearing that told you she was born to lead and trained to fight. Her name was Nova Gourmet. She told us this between ragged breaths, while Luna applied my recovery potion to her wounds. I was tracking the goblin threat, she managed. My retinue, they were with me. The carriage was ambushed before. She looked toward where the 4 soldiers had fallen. Luna's silence told her what she needed to know. Nova closed her eyes, opened them. The grief she swallowed was visible in the set of her jaw. I owe you all a debt I cannot repay today, but I ask one more kindness. Please, help me bury them. I nodded. Luna and Arya agreed without words, and then Nova collapsed. No warning, no visible wound. She simply folded, mid-sentence, clutching her chest. Her face went white. Her breathing turned shallow and rapid. The recovery potion had healed her cuts and restored her stamina. This wasn't fatigue. This was something else entirely. Get her to the room, now! Luna and Arya stripped her armor and dressed her in my old high school tracksuit, the crimson jersey with my name stitched on the chest. We laid her on the futon. She was trembling, sweat-soaked, lips turning blue. I ran through possibilities. Poison? Luna checked. No discoloration around the wounds. Curse? Paralysis? Arya needed better diagnostic tools. Emeralds, she said. I need you to make me a monocle. Emerald lens. Silver frame. The gem's resonance with healing intent will amplify diagnostic magic. I synthesized it in 20 minutes. Small emerald chips merged into a single flawless lens. Silver coins melted and shaped into a frame that hooked over Arya's long ear. She put it on, channeled magic through it, and looked at Nova. Her expression changed. Heart disease. Congenital. She's in the middle of a severe cardiac episode. Her heart can't pump properly. It never could. She's been fighting on borrowed time her entire life, and the strain of that battle pushed her past the breaking point. This girl, lying on my futon with a heart that's giving out, don't forget her. Don't forget this moment, because Nova Gourmet doesn't leave this story. Not now, not ever. Can you heal it? No. Healing magic repairs damage. This isn't damage, it's a structural defect. You can't heal a building that was designed wrong. You have to rebuild it. The diagnosis skill I'd purchased from Navisis confirmed everything. Severe cardiac dysfunction, condition, critical, prognosis without intervention, hours. I knew what this was. In Japan, we had a word for the treatment, digitalis, foxglove extract, a compound that forces the heart muscle to contract harder. At the right dose, it's medicine. At the wrong dose, it's poison. The problem was the dose. Nova's condition was 10 times worse than a standard cardiac case. My basic heart medicine, chicken heart compounds with catalyst mushroom, couldn't touch it. I needed something stronger, something dangerous. Luna, spread everything we have on the floor, every ingredient, every supply. She moved without asking why. Arya dried materials with magic. I scanned everything with herbalism and diagnosis, searching for the combination that could bridge the gap. I touched a canned tin of yakitori, and the recipe hit me like a freight train. Not learned, not reasoned out, given. The same way Navisis fed me pharmaceutical knowledge. A complete formulation materializing in my skull as if it had been filed there all along, just waiting for me to reach for it. Chicken heart from a canned yakitori tin. Digitalis, the poisonous foxglove I'd collected, and most people in this world knew only as a death sentence. Chicken liver for iron-rich blood support. Dried Adai water creature for organ fortification. Catalyst mushroom. Honey. Hot spring water. Silver white mineral powder for sustained release. Luna saw me pick up the foxglove and went pale. That's poison. Digitalis kills people. Listen to me. I held the dried plant steady. Digitalis forces the heart to contract. That's why it kills. It squeezes the heart until it can't relax. But Nova's heart can't squeeze on its own. She needs the force. The right amount of this poison is the only thing that can save her. I explained it the way I would to a patient's family. The heart is a pump. Squeeze, release. Squeeze, release. Nova's pump is broken. It can't squeeze hard enough. Digitalis provides the squeeze. Too little and nothing happens. Too much and the heart locks up, but at exactly the right dose. Luna stared at me. Then she nodded. The synthesis was the hardest thing I'd ever done. 12 times the potency of a standard cardiac medicine. Multiple ingredients that had to merge in precise sequence. My magic control buckled halfway through. The materials started destabilizing, light flaring wild. I need more power. Arya pressed against my back, channeling magic directly into my body. Still not enough. The reaction was too complex. Too many compounds demanding too much energy. Me too. Luna grabbed my knees, and her magic, warmer, wilder, completely different from Arya's, flooded into me. I poured everything into the final synthesis. A flash of golden light. When it cleared, a fine gold-tinged powder sat on the glass plate. The 12 times cardiac medicine, either the most powerful heart drug in this world's history, or the most elaborate way to kill a princess knight. Luna applied it to Nova's skin. At first, nothing. The powder sat on the surface, inert, refusing to absorb. My stomach dropped. Then, slowly, the golden dust began sinking into her skin, like rain into parched earth. Her trembling eased. Her breathing slowed from desperate gasps to deep, steady rhythm. The blue faded from her lips. Color returned. It's working, Arya said. Her heart rate is stabilizing. I sat against the wall and closed my eyes. My hands were shaking, not from exhaustion, from the knowledge that if I'd measured wrong, if the digitalis ratio had been off by a fraction, I would have killed her instead of saving her. No healer in this world would have touched Foxglove. They knew it stopped hearts. What they didn't know, what nobody in a magic-dependent civilization had ever bothered to learn, was that the same compound that stops a healthy heart can restart a failing one. That poison and medicine are the same substance at different doses. That knowledge, not power, is what separates the two. The useless merchant class had just done what an entire duchy's worth of healers couldn't. Let that sink in. A merchant saved a life that every sword, every spell, every prayer in the kingdom had failed to reach. And this won't be the last time. The burial happened that night. Arya and I went back while Luna watched over Nova. The battlefield was exactly as ugly as you'd expect. Hundreds of goblin corpses in various states of dismemberment. The smell hit me before the visuals did. Blood, viscera, the particular sourness of relaxed bowels. Arya opened a massive pit with earth magic and dragged the goblin remains in with wind. We burned them, every last one. Undead reanimation was a real risk in this world, and I wasn't leaving a potential zombie army a day's walk from the capital. The 4 soldiers who died protecting Nova, we burned them separately. Smaller fires, more care. Arya collected locks of hair from each of the 4 fallen soldiers, different colors. She could tell them apart even in the state they were in. She bundled each lock in cloth, tied them carefully, and set them aside. Nobody asked her to do this. She just did it, because that's who she was underneath the flat voice and the inappropriate jokes. We sat by the goblin pyre for a long time. The fire painted everything orange and shadow. "You don't have to watch this," Arya said. "I killed some of them. The least I can do is watch them burn." Silence. The fire cracked and popped. Somewhere in the distance, night insects chirped in total indifference to what had happened here. "In a different world," I said, "if these goblins had lived somewhere I never went, I'd never have hurt them. I don't have a grudge against goblins. If anything, I have more resentment towards certain humans." Arya didn't answer. She leaned against my shoulder and stayed there until the last flame died. I held her hand. It was small and thin and warm. We gathered the magic stones afterward. One of them was massive, larger than the mimic rocks. Arya examined it and went quiet. This wasn't a king. It was a great king, one tier above. That explains the magic immunity and the raw power. A great king, commander of multiple king-class forces. The kind of monster that shows up in guild emergency postings, with a bounty measured in millions. And we'd killed it with 3 stacked crossbow bolts and a catgirl's backfist. I synthesized the collected magic stones into a single enormous gem. Arya said it registered as Goblin Emperor class, a tier that didn't even exist in the wild anymore. It would sell for a fortune, but that was tomorrow's problem. Meanwhile, somewhere in a forest I'd never visit, Drake's party was learning what happens when you pick a fight with goblins you can't beat. They'd stumbled across a goblin patrol. Drake, ever the strategist, had attacked on sight for the magic stones and whatever loot the goblin's nest might hold. They killed one. Then the rest swarmed them. 4 nobles with legendary job classes and the combat ability of wet paper. Zara's magic wouldn't fire. Celeste's healing couldn't activate. Garen could throw punches, but couldn't land them on anything that moved. Drake swung a cheap replacement sword until his arms gave out. They ran, dropped their weapons, fled with nothing but the magic bag that held their remaining supplies. 4 legendary job classes, a magic swordsman, a grand sorceress, a supreme monk, and a holy priestess, beaten by a dozen goblins. It was the same pattern, the same humiliation, over and over. The party that had once steamrolled through dungeons on the back of my spring water couldn't handle a dozen goblins without it. I didn't know any of this at the time. I'd learn later. And when I did, I wouldn't feel satisfaction exactly. More like confirmation that the problem had never been my class. It had always been theirs. Nova woke up at dusk the following day. I was across the room synthesizing magic stones when I heard a small sound from the futon, a confused exhale, the rustle of unfamiliar fabric. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse but steady. She tried to sit up, failed, tried again. Luna helped her upright and handed her water. Nova looked at the room, at the strange furniture, at the 3 strangers watching her. Then she looked down at herself, at the crimson tracksuit with a Japanese name sewn onto the chest. "Your heart condition," I said. I didn't see the point in easing into it. "You have a congenital cardiac defect. Your heart can't pump at full capacity. Never could. Every healer and priest in your duchy failed to fix it because healing magic repairs injury, not structural defects. What you needed wasn't magic, it was medicine." She stared at me. "I made a cardiac drug from materials I had on hand. Foxglove extract, the thing everyone here calls poison, at a controlled dose, combined with compounds that support heart function. It stabilized your episode. You're not cured permanently, but the immediate danger is over. And with ongoing treatment, the next episode can be prevented." "You," she was processing. I could see it moving across her face like weather, confusion, disbelief. The slow, terrible realization that what dozens of royal physicians had failed to do across her entire life had been done by a merchant she'd met 6 hours ago. "You are a healer?" "Merchant. A merchant did this? A merchant who makes medicine. That's what my class does." She kept staring. Her eyes were wet, not crying. She was too disciplined for that. But the edges were bright, and her lower lip trembled once before she caught it. "I have carried this since I was born. Every physician, every temple, every holy order. They all said the same thing. Only a divine elixir could save me. 20 billion zenny, a treasure that might not even exist." Her voice cracked. "And you, with canned food and dried herbs, and a poisonous flower," I said. "Don't forget the poisonous flower." She laughed. It was broken and wet and real, and it hurt to hear because I could feel everything behind it. 18 years of being told she was going to die young. 18 years of fighting anyway, harder than anyone around her. Because if every battle might be her last, then she'd make each one count. And now, this. Medicine from a merchant's satchel. The men who protected me, she said. The laughter was gone. My escort, we cremated them with full fire. Arya collected locks of their hair, so you can return something to their families. Arya held out the cloth bundle, 4 small ties, 4 different colors. Nova took it with both hands and pressed it against her chest. The room was silent for a long time. I owe you my life, she said finally, and I owe them my grief. Both debts are permanent. I wanted to say something profound, something worthy of the moment. Instead, what came out was merchant logic. Your heart medicine needs to be taken regularly. I can make more. Stay until you're strong enough to travel, and I'll prepare a supply. It was practical. It was boring. It was exactly the right thing to say, because it told her the truth without wrapping it in heroics. I didn't save her because I was noble or kind or chosen by destiny. I saved her because I had the right skills, the right ingredients, and the willingness to use a poison that everyone else was too afraid to touch. That simplicity, the complete absence of grandeur, seemed to hit her harder than any oath of loyalty would have. She looked at me the way someone looks at a wall they've been pushing against their whole life, only to realize it was a door. Thank you, she said. Kai-sama, just Kai. Kai-sama, she repeated, because apparently princess knights don't take corrections from merchants. Luna brought her soup. Arya offered to check her vitals through the monocle. Nova accepted both with the confused grace of someone who had never been cared for by strangers and didn't know what to do with her hands. I went back to my corner and resumed synthesizing. The magic stone glowed gold under my palms. Outside, the first stars were appearing over Ashford, a princess knight with a healed heart, a goblin great king reduced to a gem on my desk, a party of 4 nobles who couldn't beat a dozen goblins without the spring water I used to carry for them. The merchant heals what swords cannot. Some people would call that a miracle. I called it pharmacology. And somewhere in the back of my mind, where the quiet alarms lived, a new thought was forming. If a great king commanded multiple king-class forces, and we destroyed this one's entire army, then there were other armies out there, other kings, and they'd eventually notice the gap. But that was a problem for another day. Tonight, there was soup to serve, a patient to monitor, and a gold-skinned magic stone worth more than most people saw in a lifetime. Other armies, other kings. I said it like a passing thought. It wasn't. The goblins aren't done with us, not by a long shot. I pulled Luna's blanket up when she fell asleep. Arya was already out, curled on her side, one hand reaching toward where I usually lay. Nova slept deeply for the first time in what I suspected was years. Her breathing even, her color healthy, the crimson jersey rising and falling with the steady rhythm of a heart that finally worked. 4 people in one room, 3 of them alive because of choices I'd made that day. The merchant class, the useless one, the class nobles laughed at and guilds overlooked, and the whole world considered a waste of a summoning. It had just saved a life that every healer, priest, and mage in an entire duchy couldn't. I turned off the light and listened to them breathe. Nova woke up fighting, not literally, though from the way she lunged upright in the futon and grabbed at air where her spear should have been, it was close. Luna reached her first, moving on all 4s like an actual cat, skidding across the tatami with a concern that was half nurse and half kitten. Are you okay? Does it hurt? Is your chest tight? Nova blinked, looked at the room, looked at us, looked down at herself in that crimson tracksuit with my name stitched on the front. Then she touched her own chest, not in pain, but in disbelief. The aching is gone. Her voice was barely a whisper. The tightness that has been there since I was a child, it's gone. The 12 times cardiac medicine had held through the night. I confirmed it with diagnosis. Heart rhythm stable. No inflammation. No recurring episode. She wasn't cured permanently. The structural defect was still there, lying dormant. But the acute crisis was over, and the sustained release compounds I'd built into the medicine would keep working for weeks. I handed her a stamina potion and told her to eat, over sandwiches, ham, egg, fish, jam, whatever she wanted. Nova told us who she was. Nova Gorvier, 3rd daughter of the Gorvio ducal house. The duchy was carved out 3 generations back by an emperor's brother, and it commanded a territory roughly the size of a Japanese region. She wasn't just a knight, she was a Valkyrie, a warrior priestess sworn to a god called Oldalin. When I muttered something about Odin and Valkyries from Norse mythology, she nearly crushed my ribs. She grabbed me with both arms, pulled my face into her chest plate, well, her tracksuit, and started calling me Kai-sama with an intensity that crossed from gratitude into something I wasn't equipped to handle. Luna had to full-body tackle her off me. Arya, meanwhile, had apparently developed a 1-word spell to instantly strip all her clothes off and was using the chaos as an excuse to deploy it. I survived the morning, barely. The lesson learned was that women in this world were considerably more aggressive than anything I'd faced in the goblin battle. While we recovered, Drake's party was collapsing. Their magic bag, the one they'd bought to replace the supplies they kept losing, turned out to be a devouring bag, a cursed item that mimics a genuine storage bag, accepts everything you put in it, then eats it all. Every tool, every ration, every spare weapon, gone. They discovered this when the bag fell into a campfire and screamed. The thing writhed like a burning caterpillar and died shrieking. 4 legendary job classes. No food, no tools, no weapons except what they carried on their backs. They turned around and limped toward town with empty stomachs and emptier prospects. We returned to Ashford the next day. Nova came with us. The smoked fish that Luna had caught in huge quantities. 30-odd trout-like freshwater fish. I'd processed overnight using a brine cure I found online. Soak in a salt and spice solution. Rinse. Dry for 24 hours, with Arya's wind magic keeping constant airflow. The result was a preservation technique this world had never seen. The free market opened and the usual chaos descended. Nova, it turned out, was terrifyingly effective at crowd control. One horizontal sweep of her spear generated a shockwave that silenced the entire mob, and her voice carried the weight of someone born to command. Please form an orderly line. Otherwise, there will be no cloud suites for anyone. They formed a line immediately. Cotton candy sold out at double the previous price. Medicines went next. Insect repellent, deodorizers, body wash made from saponin-rich seed pods. I was careful to avoid products that competed with the Alchemist Guild's offerings. No need to make enemies where I could avoid them. Then Arthur collapsed. He was right there, in the booth next to ours. The old woodworker had just finished delivering the folding cart stall he'd built for me. Gorgeous craftsmanship, with a carving of the merchant goddess Bansoro worked into the roof panel. His son Kekai had helped build it. His granddaughter Lily was eating cotton candy and laughing, and then Arthur grabbed his chest and dropped. "Grandpa!" Lily's scream cut through the market noise like a blade. Kekai caught his father before he hit the ground, but the old man's face was gray and twisted. I shoved through, activated diagnosis, and Arya was beside me a heartbeat later, with the emerald monocle already in place. Disease status, heart. Same reading here. Alcohol-induced cardiac damage. Years of heavy drinking finally broke something. This was different from Nova's congenital defect. Arthur's heart was healthy once, strong even, from decades of physical labor, but alcohol had eroded it from the inside. The muscle was weakened, scarred, and now it was failing. I pulled out the last packet of 12 times cardiac medicine. I'd kept 1 dose in reserve. Part of me had known I'd need it, not for Nova's next episode, but for something exactly like this. The golden powder hit Arthur's bare chest and sank in. His breathing steadied. His color returned. His eyes opened. What happened? You had a heart attack. The drinking did it. Watching merchants around us gasped. One of them called it a miracle. I called it the right drug at the right time. A merchant from the crowd immediately tried to buy my remaining medicine. Others joined in. They bid against each other while I ate lunch. By the time I checked, the price had hit 22 million zeni for a single dose. I sold it. The buyer ran off muttering about selling it to the Gourmet ducal house for a fortune, not knowing that the ducal princess was standing 3 meters behind me in borrowed clothes, already healed. The irony was beautiful. A merchant who prided himself on having the latest information had just overpaid for intelligence that was already obsolete. 1 month without alcohol, I told Arthur. If you drink again before that, the next attack will be worse, and you won't die quickly. You'll suffer, he grumbled. Lily cried with relief. Kekai shook my hand so hard I thought he'd pull my arm off. 2 heart patients healed. 2 lives pulled back from the edge by a merchant class that the world considered worthless. The reputation would spread, and I was fine with that. The auction that afternoon was electric. The gem merchants had been circling since my last sale. They'd posted lookouts at the merchant guild, boys and apprentices watching for my face. When I showed up to register for the next free market, they descended like sharks smelling blood. Synthesized diamonds, rubies, sapphires, emeralds, all artificial, all flawless, all created from cheap base stones using my synthesis skill. I'd been stockpiling. The bidding started civilized and ended feral. 2 merchants locked into a war over a 30-carat diamond that pushed the final price to 200 million zeni. The entire gem lot sold for over 487 million. Then I added a twist. 20 small gemstones of mixed types and values, each sealed in identical paper bags. 100 million zeni per bag, random draw, no complaints. The merchants went insane. Every bag sold. 507 million total from the market. I wasn't done. That evening, I walked into the Adventurer Guild and used their exchange machines to appraise the magic stones I'd been holding. the mimic rock gem, the legion stone, and the crown jewel, the Goblin Emperor class magic stone synthesized from over 200 goblin cores. The cheap machines broke, literally. The lowest tier exchange machine shattered trying to calculate the value. Then the next one, and the next. I worked my way up through 5 machines, each one overloading and collapsing, while the guild receptionist Bianca watched her expression curdle from smugness to horror. The highest tier machine hit 8,000 gold coins, 800 million zenny, and was still climbing when I pressed stop. Wait. Bianca blocked my path. Her heavy makeup was cracking at the edges from the sweat on her face. Why won't you sell here? That's over 800 million. Sell it. I held up one finger. First, I don't want to sell to the Adventurer Guild. You people made my life miserable when I was here. Why would I hand you a fortune now? Second finger. I'm not a registered adventurer anymore. Someone broke my card. That means a 20% commission on any sale. I'm not paying that. Third finger. And the third reason is you. Her face went slack. You get 1% of any non-member sale you process. 1% of 800 million is 8 million zenny. That's what, 5 years of your salary? You'd earn it in a single afternoon, and I would rather set every stone on fire than let a single zenny reach your pocket. The guild erupted. Other receptionists realized the fortune they'd missed. Adventurers realized the free drinks they'd lost. Everyone turned on Bianca because she was the one who'd broken my guild card. She'd personally destroyed the relationship that could have earned the entire guild a windfall, and now everyone knew it. I walked out under Aria's invisibility spell while they were still arguing. I didn't sell to the Adventurer Guild. I sold to the Merchant Guild that same evening. Gems, magic stones, honey, specialty goods. The total crossed 1 billion zenny before sunset, 10 billion in this world's smallest common unit. We celebrated that night. Pizza with extra tuna and melted cheese. A recipe that shouldn't have worked, but did. White wine that Aria and Nova agreed was better than anything available locally. Honey on toast for Luna, who purred so loudly the table vibrated. Chocolate for dessert, which had effects on elven physiology that I hadn't anticipated and preferred not to describe. For the first time since I'd been summoned to this world, I felt wealthy, not just financially, wealthy in the way that matters, surrounded by people who chose to be here. The morning after, my level jumped to 50. Navices chimed in with the usual fanfare and some new options. I bought 3 additional sub-jobs: Ranger for outdoor combat bonuses, Monk for physical resilience, Bard for dexterity, invested in stat upgrades, purchased a formation skill that enhanced party coordination, and then Navices offered something I hadn't heard before, a new divine revelation, lending business. The name was dull. The description was vague, something about magical debt enforcement for commercial transactions. It felt like another merchant utility, the kind of thing you'd use to notarize a contract or guarantee a loan. I bought it, filed it away, moved on. It would matter later, enormously, but I didn't know that yet. Lending business. Sounds like the most boring skill in the game, right? Debt enforcement for commercial transactions. You'll want to remember that name, because when it finally gets used, it's not boring. It's the most devastating thing in this entire story. Nova had to leave. Her duchy needed to know she was alive, and her prayers at the Temple of Oldalin couldn't wait any longer. We walked her to the temple. Inside, she spoke with the priests, made her devotions, and prepared for the journey home. The head priest, distressed that she planned to walk rather than wait for a carriage, scrambled to arrange an escort. He found one quickly, a new adventurer party with impressive pedigrees, all nobles, all carrying top-tier job classes. He introduced them with genuine pride. Drake, Garen, Zara, and Celeste, the party called Noble Blood. They were kneeling at the temple gate when we rounded the corner, heads bowed, formal posture, playing the role of noble warriors, volunteering for a sacred escort mission. They hadn't looked up yet. I recognized them by the backs of their heads. The priest beamed. Nova glanced at me. I kept my face blank. Drake raised his eyes first. He saw Nova, then Luna, then Aria, then me. The blood drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. I watched him process it. The tracksuit merchant, the bug he'd stomped, the worthless zero they'd expelled from the party and left to starve. Standing in front of him with 3 women and the quiet confidence of a man who'd made 1 billion zenny in a single day. The man whose medicine healed hearts that no healer could touch. The man whose products had merchants fighting in the streets to buy. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I didn't gloat. I didn't sneer. I didn't even address him directly. I simply looked through him the way you look through a window. Not at the glass, but at whatever's on the other side. As if he and his entire party were so far beneath notice that acknowledging them would be a waste of breath. Then I turned to Nova. You've got your escort. Travel safe. When you need more heart medicine, send word through the Merchant Guild. I'll have a supply ready. I will return, Kai-sama. Her voice was steady, but her eyes said more than her words. You have my word. She bowed. Arya and Luna said their goodbyes. Arya with a nod, Luna with a full-body hug that made Nova laugh. Then Nova Gorvier, third daughter of the ducal house, turned and walked toward the temple gate. She passed Drake without a glance. His party fell into step behind her. He looked back once, at me, at the girls, at everything he'd thrown away, and everything I'd built from the ruins he'd left. I held his gaze until he turned away. That look on his face? Watch it carefully. That's not just jealousy. That's the look of a man who's about to do something desperate. And desperate people don't think about consequences. We stood in the afternoon light until they disappeared down the road. Luna was pressed against my side. Arya's fingers were laced through mine. "Are you satisfied?" Arya asked. I thought about it. The billion zenny, the healed hearts, the look on Drake's face, the medicine in Nova's blood, the guild receptionist drowning in her colleagues' contempt, the smoked fish, the cotton candy, the emerald monocle, and the crossbow bolts, and the golden powder that turned poison into salvation. "Not yet," I said, "but closer." Luna tugged my sleeve. "Home? Home." And we walked back toward a door that opened onto a room that existed between worlds, where the bath was always warm and the futon always smelled like someone who loved you had been sleeping there. The empire was built. The enemies had seen it. Now the only question was what they'd do about it. Drake opened his mouth the moment we hit the road. The Temple of Oldalin had arranged for Nova's escort back to the Gorvier Duchy, and by some cosmic joke, the guild quest had landed in Noble Blood's hands. So there they were, my former party, walking alongside mine, pretending they hadn't just watched me sell 1 billion zennies worth of goods while they scraped by on soggy hardtack. Drake couldn't help himself. He never could. He started with the usual comments about my class, about how a merchant had no business traveling with a princess knight, about how I should be grateful they ever let me tag along in the first place. The words were aimed at his companions, loud enough for everyone to hear, wrapped in that sneering tone I'd memorized across 2 lifetimes. In my old life, I'd have swallowed it, kept walking, let the poison settle somewhere deep where it could rot me from the inside out. Not this time. Before I could respond, Nova stopped walking. She turned on her heel and faced Drake with a look that could have frozen a campfire solid. She was taller than him in her armor. The spear on her back caught the light. She told him that the man he was insulting had saved her life, that in the knightly code of the Gorvier Duchy, attacking a benefactor's honor was the same as attacking her own. She asked him if he understood what that meant, and the way she asked made it very clear that the correct answer was yes. Drake apologized. He actually bowed. His voice cracked on the words. I let the silence sit for exactly 3 seconds. Then, I leaned in close enough that only he could hear me. "Remember the noble who bragged about fine camping and elegant meals? The one who slept in the rain last night with wet bread and no fire? I'm still trying to figure out if that was you or some beggar wearing your face." His jaw locked, his fists trembled, but he said nothing because Nova was still watching and because he knew I was right. The dynamic had flipped completely. In another life, I was the one swallowing insults. Now Drake was the one choking on them. That night, the storm hit. It came down like the sky had split open. Wind tore through the canopy. Rain hammered the forest floor. And within minutes, everything was drenched. Everything except us. Arya transferred our party into the apartment, and we spent the evening in warmth and light while the world outside drowned. I made curry, 25 spices, honey, a tart fruit that grew in cold climates. The smell rolled through the apartment and leaked out into the forest like a weapon. Through the walls, I could hear Luna and Nova exclaiming over every bite. Arya ate with that quiet focus she had, the one where her eyes half closed and her ears twitched. Outside in the real world, Drake's party huddled under a tree. Their fire was dead. Their blankets were soaked. The dried meat they'd bought, the expensive kind, salted in a thick block, was so hard and briny it needed hours of soaking before it was edible. They didn't have hours. They didn't have hot water. They had rain and darkness and the smell of my curry drifting through the trees. I wasn't trying to torture them. The curry was for my team, but the contrast was doing the work all by itself. A merchant eating like a king, while 4 legendary classes chewed on salt and misery. There was a time when I would have eaten worse than them, when I'd have been the one outside, starving, while they sat warm and full. That version of me would have crawled through the rain for a single bowl of rice. That version of me was dead. Morning came bright and hot. I made seafood curry with fresh ingredients from the apartment stores. Luna woke to the smell and practically teleported to the table. Nova declared the fish quality rivaled her duchy's famous saltwater lake catch. Arya identified every spice by scent alone. When we stepped outside, Drake and his 3 companions looked like they'd spent the night at the bottom of a river, soaked, exhausted, hollow-eyed. Drake tried to greet Nova with military formality. I raised one hand, and Nova closed her mouth, deferring to me. "Glad you survived," I said. "I seem to recall you saying Noble's Camp with elegance. The soaked clothes and mud really sell that image." I listed their names, told them I'd once known a party with the same names, but those people had kept themselves clean. These four looked more like vagrants, scraping wet bread off the road, beggars pretending at nobility. They couldn't respond. They just stood there, dripping and furious, while we walked on. 2 hours later, the sun turned brutal. Humidity from the storm turned the forest into a sauna. I pulled out soft serve ice cream for my party. 4 servings, cold and sweet, synthesized from milk and sugar that morning. Luna's tail went straight up. Nova called it the finest thing she'd tasted since leaving the duchy. Drake stomped over and demanded I hand it over. "Xianshang Shiro," he said. "Offer it up," like I was his servant again. "No," I said. Nova cut in before he could escalate. She told him he was behaving like a thief, that she would dismiss him from the escort entirely and explain the situation to the temple herself. Drake crumbled. He apologized again, promised to behave, and retreated to his miserable corner. That was when Luna's ears flattened. "Goblins," she whispered. "In the trees. They haven't spotted us yet." I signaled everyone low. We were downwind. The scent wouldn't carry. If we stayed quiet, they'd pass. But staying quiet required everyone to cooperate, and Drake had never cooperated with anything in his life. He drew his sword, a one-handed blade now, not the greatsword he used to brag about, and charged into the trees screaming about impressing the princess. The other 3 followed him: Garen, Zara, Celeste, charging headlong into a forest they hadn't scouted, against an enemy they hadn't counted, making enough noise to alert every goblin in a kilometer. 1 goblin fell, barely, and then the forest answered. They came in waves. Goblins poured out of the undergrowth, small, snarling, armed with crude clubs and stolen blades. Individually weak, collectively relentless. Drake's party was overwhelmed in seconds. His sword couldn't finish a single goblin cleanly. Zara's fire magic produced a fireball the size of a fist that scorched one goblin's chest without killing it. Celeste announced she was a healer, not a fighter, which was another way of saying she was useless. "What are you doing?" Luna shouted, kicking a goblin flat with one strike. "These are supposed to be famous adventurers?" Nova asked, driving her spear through 2 goblins in a single thrust. Drake took one look at a hobgoblin emerging from the tree line, twice the size of its kin, armor-clad and roaring, and he dropped his sword and ran. He actually ran. All 4 of them did. Drake screamed that goblins prefer to attack women first, that the girls could serve as decoys, and they'd tell the temple that Nova died heroically. The sound of their footsteps faded into the forest. "Coward's gone," I said. "Good, now we fight." Arya carved a trench across the forest floor with a single sweep of her hand, 3 meters deep, dozens of meters long. Goblins charging blindly from the undergrowth fell straight in. I called the formation Crane Wing. The skill activated. It was a Japanese military tactic, the formation of a crane spreading its wings wide to envelop the enemy. I'd learned it in a history class a lifetime ago. Nobody in this world had ever seen it. Japanese military history in a fantasy world full of swords and magic. I know how that sounds. But 1,000 years of battlefield strategy doesn't care what universe you're in, and this is only the first formation I pull out. Luna took the left flank, Nova the right. The formation skill flowed through them. I could feel it, like a thread connecting us, amplifying their strikes, sharpening their instincts, and it showed immediately. Luna fought like something out of a martial arts legend. She didn't just beat goblins, she dismantled them. A flying kick sent one hobgoblin cartwheeling into the burning trench. She landed on another goblin's shoulders, grabbed its head with both hands, and twisted. The sound it made was final. Then, she hopped to the next one, and the next. Like stepping stones in a garden. Nova was the opposite, stillness itself, not moving a centimeter until a goblin entered her range. Then, a single precision thrust to the throat, lightning fast, surgical. She didn't even use the blade half the time. She reversed her spear and shattered a hobgoblin's kneecaps with the blunt end, then flipped it back and finished the job with a whisper of steel through the neck. Mercy, delivered at the speed of violence. "It feels like I'm barely touching them and they fall," Luna said. "Same here," Nova agreed. "This formation is extraordinary. I picked off stragglers with my crossbow, while Arya prepared her next spell. When it came, it was devastating. Hellflame Coffin, a wall of inferno that consumed the trench full of goblins in seconds. The screams were brief, but the goblins kept coming, hundreds of them, and behind the fodder came hobgoblins. Then a goblin general in black armor, who ripped apart his own troops to clear a path forward. I switched formations to Long Serpent for the forest terrain, then to Crescent Moon for concentrated strikes. Luna, Nova, and I fought as a unit. Luna drew the general's attention with a stone to the face. Nova crippled its knees from behind, and my crossbow bolts targeted what the armor didn't cover. We fought in rotation, covering each other, never leaving a gap. The general fell. A clean victory. No injuries on our side. Then the ground started shaking, not from the fighting, from something deeper in the forest, something heavy enough to make the earth remember it was there. The Goblin Emperor came through the forest like a natural disaster. It didn't walk around its own troops. It walked through them. The massive iron club in its hands swept left and right, sending goblins flying like leaves. Dozens of them sailed into Arya's pit, filling it with bodies. When the pit was nearly full, the Emperor ripped trees from the ground and threw them in to bridge the gap. Then it crossed, each footstep sending tremors through my boots. "Goblin Emperor," Arya whispered, her monocle glowing. Level 100. I was 50. Luna was 41. Arya, 37. Nova, 38. The thing spoke. Broken common tongue. Thick dialect. Arya translated. It said the men would die. The women would bear its children. It said this the way someone might discuss the weather. I deployed fish scale formation. Tight. Defensive. Designed for sustained exchanges. We hit it with everything. Luna landed 25 strikes in a blur of fists and feet. Total damage, 12. Nova's 16-hit spear combo did 7. My crossbow volley scored 3. Arya's blade storm. Razor winds that should have shredded steel. Left scratches no deeper than a paper cut. All resistance defense, Arya reported, her voice flat. Every attack, physical, magical, critical hit, is reduced to minimum damage. Its HP is 18,000. 18,000 hit points. And we were doing single digits per round. We couldn't retreat either. The Emperor's presence created a field that blocked escape. No teleporting back to the apartment. No running. The fight ended when one side stopped breathing. I tried everything. Crescent moon formation for concentrated assault. Bardic vibration on my crossbow bolts to rattle its nervous system. Nothing worked. The Emperor's club swings generated wind pressure so severe that even dodging the weapon itself sent Luna and Nova tumbling. Counterattacks were impossible. Minutes passed. Our stamina drained. The Emperor hadn't broken a sweat. Then Navisis spoke. The divine voice. The one that had granted me merchant skills and revelations I couldn't explain. It whispered a single word. Opportunity. I checked the Emperor's stats through Arya's monocle. Strength, 639. Constitution, 812. Magic, 38. I stared at that number. In a world where a single stat could define life or death, the Emperor had poured everything into its body and left its mind unguarded. A fortress with walls 10 meters thick and an unlocked back door. The body was invincible. The mind was paper. "Carwheel formation," I shouted. The most aggressive formation in Japanese military history, attributed to Wasugi Kenshin at the 4th Battle of Kawanakajima. Rotating assault waves. First position attacks. Second position replaces instantly. No pause between strikes. Luna charged first, closing to point-blank range. The formation swapped us. One instant, she was at the Emperor's face. The next instant, I was. Japanese yen! A bundle of cash materialized in my hand. 1 million yen, conjured through a merchant skill I'd barely understood when I acquired it. I slapped the Goblin Emperor across the face with it. Spiritual damage, not physical, not magical. The money struck at the Emperor's psyche, its dignity, its will, its sense of self. 10 points of damage to its magic stat, then 6, then 7, then 8. The Emperor's eyes went wide. It couldn't comprehend what was happening. Its defense blocked swords, arrows, lightning, fire. It couldn't block humiliation. I hit it again and again. The formation kept rotating, Luna and Nova buying me windows, while Arya called out the damage. The Emperor's magic was draining. Its movements slowed. Its roars turned confused. Then it bit me. The Emperor lunged forward and sank its teeth into my stomach. The pain was like being stabbed with a row of knives. It crushed down, and I felt ribs shift. Blood ran hot down my legs. Then it slammed its free hand into my back. Through the agony, through the blood filling my mouth, I raised the money one more time. Japanese. Yen. Critical hit. 48 damage. The Emperor's eyes rolled back. Its jaw went slack. It collapsed forward, taking me with it, and the ground shook when it landed. I lay on my back. The sky was spinning. I could hear voices. Luna screaming my name. Nova calling for me. Arya's steady tone cutting through the chaos. If the critical hit was coming, I mumbled. Could have shown up earlier. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was Luna's face above mine. Her eyes wide and wet. Her mouth forming my name over and over, like a prayer she didn't know the words to. Everything went dark. I woke to orange light filtering through the canopy. Arya's lap was under my head. Her fingers were in my hair, not moving, just resting there. Nova sat beside me, holding my hand with both of hers, the way a family member holds a patient's hand in a hospital. And Luna was on my chest, curled up like an actual cat, her ear pressed against my heartbeat, her tail wrapped around my wrist. The moment I opened my eyes, she launched upward. Kai, your heart almost stopped. Your pulse was fading and we couldn't. Hey, I tried to smile. My body felt like it was made of wet sand. I'm still here. Don't move, Arya said. You lost a lot of blood. The potions closed the wound, but the damage was real. The Emperor, unconscious from magic depletion, 7 to 8 hours before it wakes. That was the window. I told them the plan, and it was a merchant's plan, not a warrior's. We threw the Emperor into the pit where Arya had cremated the goblin army. The fire was still raging. Flames engulfed the Emperor's body, but the all-resistance defense held. 6 points of damage per minute from fire. At that rate, it would take days. That's not the point, I said. They watched the fire. They watched the Emperor's HP on the monocle. Nothing happened. 6 damage, 6 damage, 6 damage. Then, its HP is dropping, Arya said, her voice suddenly sharp. Fast, 15,000, 13,000, 11. What's happening? Nova leaned forward. 8,000, 6, 3, 0. The Emperor's body caught fire. Actually caught fire, like a normal creature would. The all-resistance defense had died with its consciousness, or rather, with its life. I'd killed it with suffocation, not swords, not magic. Oxygen deprivation. Fire consumes oxygen. A blaze that size, in a pit that deep, with flames reaching above the Emperor's head. There was nothing left to breathe. The defense blocked attacks. It couldn't block the absence of air. The Emperor's lungs worked fine. They just had nothing to work with. How did you know? Arya asked. It said it wanted to breed. Any creature that needs offspring knows it can die. If it can die, it's mortal. If it's mortal, it breathes. And if it breathes, you take the air away, Arya finished. Back home, farmers stress their fruit trees, starve them of water and nutrients to force better fruit. The tree thinks it might die, so it puts everything into its seeds. The Emperor was the same. Invincible armor, mortal lungs. The strongest defense in the world doesn't matter if you can't breathe. That right there is the merchant's brain in a nutshell. Swords couldn't do it. Lightning couldn't do it. But thinking sideways, finding the gap nobody else looks for, that's how a merchant wins a war. Don't forget that principle. It comes back. The pit burned. We collected magic stones by the sackful, hundreds, maybe 1,000 goblins worth, plus the Emperor's own stone, massive and pulsing with residual energy. The haul was staggering. We carried everything back to the apartment and collapsed. Someone started laughing. I don't know who went first. Maybe it was all of us at once, but suddenly we were all laughing. Luna's bright, ringing laugh. Nova's surprised one, like she'd forgotten she could. Arya's quiet exhale that counted as a full belly laugh by her standards. Mine was weak, more breath than sound, because laughing hurt my stomach where the teeth had been. Luna had already laid out the futon by the time I stopped. Rest, she ordered. His clothes are ruined, Nova said. Blood everywhere. He needs to be cleaned, but a bath would be too much. I'll get warm cloths. Luna was gone and back in seconds. The three of them gathered around me and started wiping down my arms, my chest, my neck, careful around the wound, gentle with the bruises. So, Luna said, wringing out a cloth, how did you actually kill that thing? We threw it in the fire, and it was barely taking damage, I told them. About oxygen, about combustion, about the candle snuffer that noble houses use, how it seals the flame and starves it of air until it dies. The same principle, scaled up to a monster. Nova listened with her head tilted. Luna's ears rotated forward like satellite dishes. Arya nodded once, slowly. The nod that meant she'd already worked it out, but wanted to hear me say it. The defense was invincible against attacks, I said. But suffocation isn't an attack. It's an absence. You can't resist something that isn't there. Brilliant, Nova whispered. Reckless, Arya corrected. Both, Luna decided. Then Arya's hand drifted toward my waistband. Nova's eyes locked onto my midsection with an intensity that had nothing to do with medicine. Luna pressed her face closer to investigate something she claimed smelled interesting. Bath, I said. All three of you, now. I defended my last piece of clothing like it was a fortress gate and sent them away. Through the bathroom door, I could hear them laughing again, and I realized, lying there with my ribs aching and my stomach bandaged and the taste of blood still fading from my mouth, that this was the sound of family, not a party, not an alliance. Family. We'd nearly died together. We'd fought in formations that required absolute trust, moved like a single organism, bled and burned, and refused to break. Luna had thrown her body between me and harm without a thought. Nova had fought through exhaustion with a heart that had been failing weeks ago. Arya had poured her magic to the dregs and still had the presence of mind to translate a monster's dialect mid-battle. And now they were arguing about who got to sit closest to me when they came back. The apartment was warm. The futon was soft. Somewhere in the pit outside, the last of the goblin army was turning to ash and magic stones. We'd come out the other side, all four of us, together. I closed my eyes and let the laughter carry me to sleep. The next morning, I could stand. That was about the best I could say for myself. The Goblin Emperor's bite had closed thanks to potions, but the blood I'd lost was still missing. My body felt hollow, like someone had drained half the water from a fish tank, and the fish was still swimming, just slower. Potions healed wounds. They didn't manufacture blood. The wound seals. The weakness stays. We took a full rest day. I slept until afternoon, ate well, and drank a stamina potion I'd brewed from dried eel-like creatures and insect husks. It tasted better than it had any right to. Luna headbutted my shoulder until I shared it. Arya and Nova followed suit, and within minutes, the three of them were flushed and energetic, while I was still running on fumes. By the following day, I was strong enough to travel. Our destination, the Gourmet Duchy, Nova's homeland. 300 kilometers of unpaved road, which meant 12 days on foot minimum, assuming nothing tried to kill us along the way. We'll be there by tomorrow afternoon, Arya said, as though she'd just announced the weather. I stared at her. 300 kilometers, tomorrow afternoon. She led us off the main road and into the forest. I was about to protest when she stopped at a clearing where a single tree stood apart from the others. It was different. The leaves were a vibrant yellow-green, almost luminous, and the air around it hummed with a warmth that seeped into my bones. Life itself seemed to radiate from its bark. "This is a root of the world tree," Arya said. "Where it surfaces, I can use magic to transfer us to another root, one near the Gourmet territory." She drew a diagram in the dirt with a stick, a massive tree with roots stretching across continents, surfacing in different lands, like veins of the earth, breaking through skin. She cast the spell before I could finish admiring the tree. Light swallowed everything. My body dissolved into particles, scattered, then reassembled in another clearing, hundreds of kilometers away. The whole experience felt like being vacuumed through a tube made of sunlight. When I opened my eyes, Arya was inches from my face with her lips pursed. I jerked back. Nova protested that waking a sleeping prince was a princess's duty. Some things never changed no matter how far we traveled. The Gourmet Duchy opened up within half a day's walk. Mountain terrain, low humidity, birdsong cutting through clean air, a massive saltwater lake spread below a white fortress on a highland. Fishing boats dotted the water, and the castle's position made the lake a natural moat. Any army approaching by land would need to circle the entire body of water. The place was built to be unbreakable. "This is home," Nova said. The pride in her voice was quiet, but unmistakable. We crossed the lake by ferry. The city of Ironhaven rose around us in concentric rings, double walls, then triple walls, each layer marking an era of expansion. The closer we got to the castle, the more orderly the streets became. Night residences, military quarters, guards who saluted Nova by reflex the moment they saw her face. No checkpoints needed. She was the password. The castle gates opened, and we entered the courtyard. Nova exchanged a few words with a guard, who sprinted inside. Within minutes, a crowd of soldiers and knights came rushing out, and at their head, a thin old man in formal dress, his face split wide with joy. "Princess, you've returned. Andrew, I'm home." "Oh, this old servant is overjoyed." He reached for her arm, trying to guide her inside. Come, quickly, Andrew. These people have been extraordinarily kind to me." He wasn't listening. The smile vanished from his face like a candle blown out. He stepped between us and Nova, and the warmth in his eyes was replaced by something cold and absolute. He raised his right hand. Soldiers drew their weapons. In 2 seconds flat, Luna, Arya, and I were surrounded by a ring of steel. Spear tips and sword edges all pointed inward, at us. Andrew's voice shook with fury. He said he'd received an urgent message from the Oldolan Temple in Abukasam that a cat beastman, an elf, and a black-haired man had caused a goblin attack that nearly killed the princess. That Nova had stayed behind to hold off the monsters while these 3 cowards fled. He demanded our arrest. If we resisted, he said, cut us down. No hesitation. I looked at the spears aimed at my chest and thought, this is what it feels like to have no power in someone else's kingdom. Nova screamed at him to stop. He blocked her path with his body, pleading with her to stay back. She planted her spear in the flagstones, vaulted over him and every soldier surrounding us in a single pole vault arc, and landed at my side. The courtyard went silent. "Lower your weapons," she commanded. The steel in her voice matched the steel in her hand. The soldiers wavered. Some looked at each other. A few began to lower their blades. But Andrew stood his ground, trembling with rage, insisting we were criminals who'd endangered his princess. Nova's eyes blazed. She asked him if he was calling her a liar. She asked if he truly believed her spear was inferior to goblins. She laid out the truth with the precision of a blade. that the four adventurers who'd actually caused the goblin swarm were Drake's party, who'd attacked recklessly, failed to kill a single goblin, and fled screaming that the women should serve as decoys, that we had stayed, that we had fought, that we had killed a goblin emperor. The courtyard murmured. Andrew's face contorted. He tried to dismiss her words. And then, mid-sentence, Nova's knees buckled. She collapsed. Luna shouted it was the heart condition. Arya told me to examine her. I was already moving. I activated my diagnostic skill, and Nova's body glowed with pale green light as I scanned her vitals. The diagnosis came back instantly. I recognized the pattern. This is a cardiac episode, I said, a severe one. Andrew went pale. Luna confirmed it. The same condition that had nearly killed Nova before. The one no duchy physician or famous alchemist had been able to treat. The one I'd cured. I ordered Arya to put up a barrier around us. Something small, just enough for the four of us. She cast it immediately. A dimensional shift, not a simple wall. The soldiers couldn't reach us. Then, I turned to the old man and the gathered troops. There is no treatment, I said. Andrew screamed. I cut him off. Shut up. You think shouting fixes a dying heart? If your noise causes me to make a single wrong decision and she dies because of it, that's on you. Every second of it. He recoiled like I'd hit him. I told them the truth. The reason Nova collapsed was standing right in front of me. Andrew's violent threats against us. The people she'd fought beside, nearly died beside, had driven her to rage. She'd swung her spear, vaulted over armed men, put her body between us and their blades. The emotional shock of watching her own guardian try to murder her companions had hammered her already fragile heart like a fist. She collapsed because of you, I said. Everything that happens from here is your fault. Andrew's knees hit the ground. He begged. I told him begging wasn't enough. He bowed. I told him a 1-second bow from a man who'd tried to kill me meant nothing. He bowed deeper. I told him a head bowed where I couldn't see his expression might be hiding a tongue stuck out in contempt. Prove it, I said. Prove your words are real. Convince me, or Nova dies, and it's your name on the headstone. I wasn't being cruel for sport. This man had ordered our execution without asking a single question. He'd ignored Nova's words. He'd drawn a blade and lunged at me. In my old life, when people with power decided you were worthless, you just accepted it. You swallowed the injustice and prayed it didn't get worse. Not anymore. Not ever again. I turned to the soldiers. I reminded them that Andrew's actions had caused Nova's collapse, that they'd followed his order and pointed weapons at their own princess, that if Nova died, every one of them would face execution for their role in it. The soldiers started to crack. One by one, they turned on Andrew. Voices rose. They'd only followed orders. They'd lowered their weapons immediately when Nova commanded it. This was all the old man's fault. I pulled out a golden-colored bottle. The soldiers gasped. Someone whispered, elixir. The word spread like fire. They begged me to use it. Well, I said to Andrew, what will you do? I can save her, but I don't take orders from men who tried to kill me. He broke. He said he'd do anything. I asked him if he had family. He told me his wife was dead. His son had died in a plague 3 years ago, and all he had left were 2 granddaughters. Small children, 4 or 5 years old, that he'd been raising alone. Bring them here, I said. He sent soldiers running. They came back carrying 2 little girls on their shoulders, confused and blinking in the courtyard light. Tiny things, round faces, no idea why they'd been brought here. Now, I said, take your dagger and kill them both. The courtyard froze. Andrew stared at me like the words hadn't registered. I repeated them, slowly, clearly. Take the dagger in your hand. Drive it into both their chests. Kill your own grandchildren. He screamed that I was insane. I asked him why. We were someone's grandchildren too. He'd tried to kill us without a second thought. So what was the difference? Only that these happened to be his. He shouted that they were innocent. I shouted back louder. So were we. I let that hang in the air. He stammered about nobility, about the difference between highborn servants of a duke and lowborn vagrants like us. I threw his own words back at him. If the lives of commoners were worth less than nobles, then surely 2 nameless servant girls were worth less than a duke's granddaughter. He should be honored, grateful even. 2 low lives for 1 high one. Simple arithmetic. The soldiers were starting to shift. Whispers. Someone muttered about me being heartless. I heard it. Something to say? I asked, looking at no one in particular. Silence. Then I changed targets. I told the soldiers they were in danger too, that Andrew's actions had led directly to Nova's collapse, that the longer this dragged on, the worse Nova got, that if she died, their heads would line the castle wall next to Andrew's. If he just does it, I said, holding up the potion, I use this. Nova wakes up. Everyone lives. Everyone goes home. The dam broke. Soldiers started shouting at Andrew. They said it was his fault, his responsibility, his mess to clean up. One of them picked up a spear and moved toward the children. If you won't do it, we will. Wait, Andrew screamed. They're my granddaughters. So what? 2 brats for the princess? Do the math. The mob closed in. Andrew threw himself over the children. The little girls started crying without understanding why. And then a soldier behind them moved. A spear drove through one of the girls from behind. She made a small sound. Her body crumpled forward as the spear withdrew, and she fell face first onto the flagstones. Blood pooled out from under her tiny frame. More blood than you'd think a body that small could hold. Andrew screamed her name, Luna. His voice cracked apart on the word. The soldiers surged toward the second girl, voices overlapping. Do it now, before it's too late, before the elixir can't save the princess anymore. Arya, I said, blast them away from the children. Wind magic detonated outward. Every soldier near the girls went flying, tumbling across the courtyard like ragdolls. Andrew too. I dropped the barrier, sprinted to where Luna lay in her own blood, and poured potion directly onto the wound. The bleeding stopped instantly. The puncture closed. Beneath the torn fabric, white skin appeared, not even a scar. The girl's breathing steadied. She was alive. Andrew crawled toward her, weeping. He looked up at me with something between disbelief and terror. How does it feel? I asked him. Spears pointed at someone you love. No power to stop it. No one listening when you beg. I crouched down to his level. That was my evening, old man. Every second of it. Courtesy of you. He broke completely. Whatever pride, whatever self-righteousness had kept his spine straight, it was gone. Just a shaking old man on the flagstones, clutching a child who'd almost died because of his own stupidity. I told him I wasn't a saint. I wasn't pretending to be one. I didn't forgive people who tried to kill me just because they said sorry. Apologies without pain behind them were just words. Noise that faded the moment the head lifted. Real remorse cost something. Real accountability left a mark. The final terms were simple. His entire personal fortune transferred to me. Every coin, every valuable, everything portable. In exchange, his granddaughters lived, and I treated Nova. He agreed without hesitation. There was nothing left in him to resist with. I had Luna and Arya prop Nova up. I twisted the cap off the golden bottle. The carbonation hissed. I tilted it against her lips. She swallowed. Once. Twice. Her eyes opened, and I leaned close enough that only she could hear me. Sorry I made you wait, I whispered. It's all right, she whispered back. The soldiers outside the barrier erupted. They thought they'd witnessed an elixir worth 100 million zenny save a dying princess. What they'd actually witnessed was a girl who'd faked a heart attack drinking ginger ale. The diagnostic skill had told me immediately. No cardiac event, no danger, just a performance, timed perfectly to give me leverage over a hostile situation. I'd played along because the old man needed to learn, and because the people who point spears at you while you're innocent don't get to walk away thinking they did nothing wrong. Was it too far? Maybe. The girl got stabbed. A child bled on the ground because I pushed a crowd of armed men to their breaking point. I'd calculated the risk. I had potions. I had Arya's magic. I had the speed to intervene. But the margin had been thin. Thinner than I liked. I wasn't going to lose sleep over Andrew. He'd earned every second of his terror. But the look on that little girl's face when she fell, that stayed with me. That was the price. And I was the one who'd set it. I know what you're thinking right now. Some of you are calling it justice. Some of you are calling it something else. I'm not going to tell you which one is right, but I will say this. Whatever you're feeling about me in this moment, hold on to it, because this isn't the last time I'll make you feel it. The formal audience with the Duke came next. A steward led us through corridors I could barely process. Ceilings 3 stories high, floors polished to mirrors, the kind of architecture that existed to make you feel small. Nova coached us on etiquette. Right knee down, not left. The left knee forward meant your sword hand was ready. Right knee down said, I'm not here to fight. The Duke of Gourmet sat at the far end of a hall the size of a supermarket. I couldn't make out his features until we were close. Just a figure radiating authority, the way a furnace radiates heat. Nova reported her return in formal language I could barely follow. The Duke acknowledged it in 4 words. He told us we'd done well escorting his granddaughter. He used the word commend. Then he dismissed us. That was it. No reward, no formal thanks. No compensation for saving the life of a duke's granddaughter twice over, curing an incurable disease, and killing a goblin emperor. Just, well done, and you may go. Like we were servants who'd polished the silverware adequately. I walked out of that hall with my jaw clenched so tight, my teeth ached. The unfairness burned. Not because I wanted gold, but because it confirmed what I'd always known about power. You gave everything, and they gave you a pat on the head and showed you the door. We sat in the waiting room. I cracked open a drink. Luna settled into my lap. Arya sipped tea. Nova kept starting sentences and stopping. I'd already decided to leave. Abuka-san was better for commerce, better for connections, better for the life I was building one transaction at a time. Nova would stay here where she belonged, We'd part ways, and that would be that. Then the door opened, and the Duke walked in. Not through a steward, not through a summons. The Duke of Gourmet came to us personally, sat down across from me, and told me his name, Sergei Gourmet. The formality evaporated. His voice softened. He spoke not as a ruler, but as a grandfather, one who'd spent years watching his granddaughter suffer from a disease no one in the empire could cure, who'd felt powerless despite commanding an army, who'd lain awake wondering if his position, his wealth, his title meant anything at all if he couldn't save one girl's heart. He called us by name, Kai, Luna, Arya. He'd memorized them from Nova's private letter, the one she'd sent ahead through the Mage Guild. He looked each of us in the eyes and bowed his head. "Thank you," he said, "for saving Nova, for curing her. An old man's gratitude. That's all I can offer that means anything." And just like that, the anger drained out of me, not because his words fixed the formal audience. That had still been insulting, but because I understood. The throne room was theater. The formal dismissal was politics. A duke couldn't shower foreign commoners with rewards in front of his court without setting a precedent that would haunt him for decades. So he'd done the minimum in public and come to us in private, where it was real. Nova saw her opening. "Grandfather," she said, "about the reward for saving my life." The Duke nodded. He said of course. He told her to name it. "I want to go with Kai." The Duke and I stood up at exactly the same time, for entirely different reasons. Nova launched off the sofa, crossed the room in a flying leap, and slammed into me with her full weight, armor and all. Her breastplate hit my solar plexus, and the air left my body in a wheeze. I collapsed onto the sofa, with a princess attached to me like a limpet. She declared her intentions to her grandfather, without releasing her grip on my neck. Kai was brilliant, brave, a merchant of extraordinary skill. She'd seen his wisdom in battle, his kindness in medicine, his strength in crisis. Her heart belonged to him. Therefore, she was the reward. All of her. Her sword, her loyalty, her future. The Duke objected. He shouted about the Valkyrie oath, about the divine protection of Oldelan that would vanish if she married. He invoked duty, lineage, responsibility. Nova told him that Kai was the reincarnation of Oldelan himself, that only someone within the temple would recognize the signs, that she'd seen them, that this was not a girl's infatuation, it was divine certainty. The Duke refused. Nova told him she'd hate him forever if he said no, that she'd never speak to him again. He lasted about 4 seconds. "Fine, I approve. Just don't hate your grandfather." She leaped into his arms. He caught her, armor, spear, and all, in a princess carry that proved the old man's bloodline was no joke. They hugged like the world was ending and starting at the same time. 2 years, the Duke said, setting her down. "Formal procedures require it. 2 years of betrothal before the marriage is official." Luna nodded from my lap, like she'd seen this coming from 3 phases ago. Arya sipped her tea and quietly announced that the position of first wife was already taken. The Duke started muttering about great-grandchildren and whether propriety demanded waiting for the ceremony or if, perhaps, starting early might be acceptable. "Go forth and be fruitful," he said to Nova, then corrected himself. "I mean, work hard." Nova nodded with crimson cheeks, and I sat on the sofa wondering how a trip to collect a reward had ended with me engaged to a princess. Meanwhile, in Abakusum, far from the Gourmet duchy, the consequences of cowardice were arriving. Drake and his party had stumbled back to civilization and headed straight for the Oldelan temple. They'd spun their story with practiced ease. 3 nameless vagrants had provoked a goblin swarm. Nova had heroically stayed behind to cover the escape, and Noble Blood had fought valiantly before being overwhelmed. They'd come bearing the last words of a fallen princess. The temple received them warmly, fed them, gave them a guest room. Drake was already calculating the rewards, a connection to the temple hierarchy, future quests, maybe even a stipend for their service. Then the door exploded open. A priest stormed in with guards behind him. The message from the Gourmet Mage Guild had arrived. Nova was alive. The truth was known. The 4 cowards who'd abandoned a Valkyrie and lied about her death were sitting in the temple's guest room, eating the temple's food, using the temple's hospitality to build a case for rewards they didn't deserve. The guards didn't ask questions. They beat Drake until he stopped talking, dragged all 4 of them outside, and threw them into the street with their belongings hurled after them. A bag hit Drake square in the face before he could finish his first word of protest. They'd lost their free meal, their connection, their credibility. They wandered Abakusum's streets with empty pockets and bruised faces, and they still had no idea that the goblins they'd run from Every last one, including the Emperor, were already dead, killed by the people they'd abandoned. Nova stood beside me as we prepared to leave the duchy. The Duke had given his blessing. The 2-year engagement was set. Luna and Arya accepted her into our formation without a word of protest. They'd fought beside her, bled beside her, and watched her throw herself between armed men and my chest. She'd earned her place long before any formal arrangement. The 4 of us, a merchant, a cat beastman fighter, an elf mage, a princess knight, standing in the courtyard of a fortress built to be unbreakable and choosing to leave it behind. Nova's life debt was paid, not in coin, not in service, but in the only currency that mattered. She'd given me her future, her choice, her vow, a princess who leaves her kingdom, her divine protection, everything she's ever known. For a merchant, you'll want to hold on to that because the weight of what she just gave up, it doesn't hit all at once, it hits later. And when it does, you'll understand why she's different from everyone else in this story. I looked at the 3 of them, Luna already stretching for the road, Arya adjusting her robes with that serene half smile, Nova in her silver and white armor with her spear catching the mountain light. My party, my people, bound not by obligation or contract, but by everything we'd survived together. The road back to Abakusum stretched out ahead of us, 300 kilometers of forest and mountain and sky. But we had the world tree's roots, and we had each other. And for the first time since I'd been dragged into this world, the road ahead didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a beginning. 3 days after leaving the Gourmet Duchy, we were back in Abakusum. The World Tree's route network cut a 12-day journey down to 1. Magic like that shouldn't feel casual, but with Arya, it did. She cast it the way someone else might open a door. Light dissolved us, rebuilt us, and there we were, home, or whatever Abakusum counted as. Our first stop was the Oldalin Temple. The priest wept when he saw Nova alive, not metaphorically. Actual tears ran down his face. He'd heard Drake's version of events, then received the correction from Gourmet, and the whiplash had nearly broken the old man. Nova discussed leaving her holy orders, but the priest urged patience. The marriage was 2 years away. No need to surrender Oldulin's divine protection today. Between us, he added, leaning in conspiratorially, our vows don't actually forbid having a sweetheart. Some Valkyries have been known to bend that particular rule. Even the faithful found their loopholes. I filed that away and said nothing. Walking through the city afterward presented a different kind of problem. Nova had entered what I could only describe as young wife mode. She clung to my arm, calling me darling, and squealing at her own boldness. The composed princess knight, who'd pole vaulted over a wall of armed soldiers, was now blushing at the word husband. There is a battle here that cannot be lost, Arya announced and claimed my other arm. Not much cushion on that side, but her grip was iron. Both of you are cheating! Luna launched herself at my front, wrapping her arms around my neck and her legs around my waist like a koala. Passers-by stared. Men on the street muttered about showing off. 3 beautiful women attached to 1 unremarkable man in broad daylight. I was generating hostility just by existing. We reached Arthur's workshop in the artisan district. Alyssa spotted us first, waving and shouting. The old craftsman emerged from inside, took one look at my situation. 3 women draped over me like ornaments, and said exactly what anyone would. The hell are you doing in public? Fair point. Days passed. I threw myself into commerce. The open market became my stage. Cotton candy sold out in an hour. The rescue kit boxes Arthur had built. Wooden cases partitioned inside with slots for wound salve, cold medicine, joint ointment, stomach remedy, moved steadily. I designed them. Arthur built them, and we split the profits. He got work. I got product. The customers got something no one in this world had thought to package before. A home first aid kit. When the sun climbed high and the heat settled in, I switched products. Arthur's apprentices had carved wooden paddles on short notice. Simple flat sticks, like the ones you'd get with convenience store ice cream back in Japan. The tool was primitive. The product was not. Shaved ice. I cranked the iron shaver, and translucent crystals piled into paper cups. Arya drizzled syrup. Nova added the paddle. Luna collected payment. An assembly line, smooth as clockwork. 500 zenny a cup, and the line never stopped. Cloud sweets in the morning, snow sweets at noon, a customer said. This stall is something else. The profit margins were obscene. The ice came from spring water. I froze with Arya's magic. The syrup cost almost nothing. I was selling water for 500 zenny a cup, and people were thanking me for it. After the food came the gems. The merchants had been waiting patiently, some of them eating shaved ice while they watched me work. When I announced the jewelry auction, They gathered like sharks smelling blood. Silver chain necklaces with cubic zirconia pendants. Machine-manufactured items worth less than 1,000 yen back home fetched 600,000 zeni each. 10 sold. The merchants couldn't tell machine-made uniformity from master dwarf craftsmanship, and I wasn't about to educate them. But the final piece was special. The night before, I'd experimented with my synthesis skill. Instead of simply merging gems into a larger mass, I'd wrap the material around a hollow center, like folding dumpling skin around filling. Into that hollow, I'd dripped a few drops of hot water before sealing it shut. The result? A cubic zirconia with liquid trapped inside. When you tilted it, the water moved. A gem that breathed. 300 million zeni. The Shedburn Trading Company bought it without hesitation. After the auction, the Shedburn merchant lingered. He showed me a plain stone, just a pebble from the roadside, with a diagonal scratch across it. Then, he spun a myth about the god Deus striking the earth with lightning to bring the first rain, and claimed this pebble was a fragment of the shattered boulder. His voice dropped to a whisper. His eyes glinted. "So, would you buy it?" he asked. "If I were a devout follower of Deus, I might pay my entire fortune?" "Exactly, and that's the trick, yeah? This is just a rock, but show it to the right person, tell the right story." He tapped his temple. "That's the merchant's art." I understood him completely. He wasn't teaching me to lie. He was teaching me to sell. And in this world, those skills would cut deeper than any sword. That evening, back home, I converted the day's earnings. My level rose to 61, and with it came a new revelation from the divine system, lending business. The skill description was simple and terrifying. If someone owed me a debt, I could enforce collection supernaturally, not through courts, not through threats, through the same divine framework that granted my merchant powers. The skill would identify what the debtor possessed: cash, assets, equipment, even physical abilities, and extract value whether they agreed or not. No running, no hiding, no negotiating. There it is. The quiet little skill I bought 2 phases ago and filed away like a receipt. Told you it wasn't boring. This is a weapon, and I'm about to aim it at the people who broke me. Lending business, I murmured, turning it over in my mind. Magically enforced debt collection. The interest alone would be, the implications were staggering, but one thought kept surfacing, sharp and specific. There was someone who owed me, someone who'd stolen from me, beaten me, thrown me away like garbage, someone who'd lied about Nova and nearly gotten us killed. And as of a few days ago, that someone was wandering Abukusam's streets with nothing. I looked at Luna, Arya, Nova. "I need your help," I said. "Before dinner, all 3 of you." They nodded without asking why. They already knew. I laid out the plan. The Adventurers Guild was packed at sundown. Hunters returning from jobs. Fighters cashing in monster parts. Drunks arguing over ale in the attached tavern. The usual chaos. We walked straight to the gold tier exchange machine. Arya cast a presence dampening spell so no one bothered us, until the machine's automated voice started counting. 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 12,000 gold coins. The display locked. The voice echoed through the hall. 12 billion zeni. The spell didn't hide the machine. Heads turned. Whispers spread. And then someone recognized me. "That's the expelled baggage carrier." A familiar voice cut through the noise. Coarse, entitled, desperate. I turned and saw them. 4 people at a tavern table, nursing cheap drinks in wooden mugs. Their armor was gone. Their weapons were gone. They looked like vagrants who'd wandered in off the street. "Well," I said, "if it isn't the fake nobles who ran from goblins." Drake's face twisted. He stood, pointed at me, and started screaming demands. Hand over the money. Hand over everything. But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at what he'd become. A 16-year-old boy in a threadbare leather vest. No sword. No plate armor. Nursing a wooden cup of the cheapest swill the tavern served. His self-proclaimed noble birth had bought him nothing. His highest tier combat class had given him nothing. Without me boosting his stats with enchanted spring water. Without me managing his supplies and logistics. Without me doing every job he was too proud to touch. He was this. A beggar with a title. "Your shoes," I said. "What?" "Your shoes are filthy. All 4 of you. Where I come from, there's a saying. You can judge someone's situation by their feet. People who are struggling stop caring about the details. The edges fray. The mud stays. You've stopped caring." "Shut up! We just hit a rough patch." "Rough patch." I let the words hang. You can't complete quests. You can't recruit replacements. You can't afford gear. And you're drinking gutter wine in a guild you used to strut through like royalty. That's not a rough patch, Drake. That's a cliff, he snapped. Something behind his eyes broke. The last scrap of rationality that had been holding him together since the temple threw him out. He and Garen charged me. No strategy, no coordination, just 2 desperate men lunging forward, because forward was the only direction left. Luna stepped in front of me. Arya moved beside her. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a demonstration. Garen locked hands with Luna in a test of raw strength. a man twice her size pressing down with everything he had. She held him there, yawning, then slammed him face first into the floor with one motion. When he staggered up, swearing revenge, she folded her arms across her chest and told him she'd fight without using her hands. He charged. She jumped, spinning in midair, 4.5 rotations, and whipped her tail across his temple at the peak of the spin. The counter multiplied the force 9 times over. Garen dropped like a sack of wet sand. Drake attacked Arya while everyone watched Luna. She sidestepped him, tripped him, and let him crash into a machine. He came at her again. She dodged without effort, summoned her Ashwood bow from thin air, and slapped him across the face with it, like swatting a fly. When he tried a hidden blade, she struck first. When he challenged her to a close-range magic duel, she walked up to him and simply waited. His magical power ball, which he needed both hands and full effort to catch, she'd blown toward him like a soap bubble. "This is why you're weak," she told him. "Your class is the highest tier, but your base stats are trash. Everything you ever accomplished was because of Kai's water. Without him, you can't swing a sword, can't cast a spell, can't even catch a training level magic ball without gasping for air. And here's the worst part. Your class can never go back to the basics. You can't relearn what you skipped. It's like trying to become a child again." Zara and Celeste fired a combined energy bolt at Luna from behind. She kicked it back into their faces. They went down in a heap of their own magic. The 4 of them lay on the guild floor, beaten by 2 of my companions, without either breaking a sweat. And then Drake did the one thing I'd been waiting for. He begged. "Come back," he whispered. "Come back to the party." I let the silence stretch. Then I told them the price. 40 million zenny, reparations for every unpaid share, every beating, every humiliation. The standard in this world was double what was stolen. They owed me 20 million in wages, so 40 million it was. They couldn't pay. Of course they couldn't. So I offered an alternative, a written apology backed by payment. Drake scrambled. He got the guild to front 4 jewels worth 10 million each. Bianca, the receptionist who destroyed my adventurer's card, paid her own 20 million from guild funds and signed a blood oath. They thought this meant I was coming back. "All right," I said. "The apology is accepted. The debt for the old grievances is settled." Drake's face lit up like a child's. He started babbling about reforming the party, about how we'd be unstoppable together. "Now," I said, "who told you I was rejoining?" The light died. "I said I'd forgive the past. I never said I'd repeat it. I'm not joining your party. I'm not rejoining the guild, and I have nothing more to say to any of you." Drake screamed. Garen charged. Both of them lunged at me to take me hostage. I spun in place, both arms extended, a full body rotation like a figure skater, and clotheslined them both. They went flying into Bianca and the other 2 women. All 5 tumbled across the floor. And then Drake played his last card. He turned to the room and screamed that I had 12 billion zenny on me, and if they all attacked at once, they could split it. 50 adventurers, weapons drawn, surrounding us. "Now," I said quietly. Nova appeared from nothing. 1 second, there was empty air beside me. The next, a princess knight materialized with her stone spear already in motion. Arya's invisibility spell shattered the instant Nova struck, and she struck like a force of nature. The spear reversed, blunt end forward, and what came next defied everything I thought I knew about close quarters combat. Not 1 thrust, not 10, 100. The 100 strikes technique, the signature art of the Gourmet Valkyrie Corps. Each thrust landed before the sound of the previous one reached my ears. The stone tip became a blur, then stopped being visible entirely. It was just a wall of force radiating from Nova's hands. 8 adventurers flew backward in a single burst, crashing into others like dominoes. The ones behind them stumbled. The formation collapsed. I caught the modified crossbow Arya teleported into my hands and fired a spread of 10 small bolts into the densest cluster. The bolts were designed to burrow deep, impossible to remove without surgical tools this world didn't have. Luna pounced on the rest. 1 adventurer remained standing, a massive man nicknamed the Fortress, carrying a tower shield made of layered iron plates. Luna's dropkick barely pushed him back. He laughed and declared nothing could pierce his shield or his armor. Luna held up her hand. On each finger, a tiny gem sparkled. "Excalibur," I said. "That's the one." Luna grinned. "Diamond claws. Hardness 15 on the Mohs scale. Iron's hardness is 4.5. She crossed the gap in a blink, and the tower shield fell apart in 2 clean halves. The layered plate armor followed, peeling off him like fruit skin and clattering to the floor in a pile of scrap metal. Arya finished it. A single lightning bolt punched through the fortress, and every adventurer lined up behind him. Then, her binding ivy spell erupted from the floor, ensnaring every hostile body in the building. Not just adventurers, staff, receptionists, everyone. The doors burst open. Guards and Oldalin Temple Knights poured in, exactly as planned. I'd sent word to the garrison before we ever entered the guild. The timing wasn't coincidence. It was choreography. Nova stepped forward, her spear at rest, her composure restored to its natural state. Regal, untouchable, the granddaughter of a duke. She explained calmly that she'd been present the entire time, concealed by magic, and that these adventurers had drawn weapons against her person. That wasn't a brawl, that was treason against nobility. The Temple Knights understood immediately. These were the same men who'd thrown Drake out of the temple days ago for lying about Nova's death. They had a score to settle, and now they had legal grounds. Drake screamed that he was a noble too. A Temple Knight smashed him across the jaw with a spear shaft and told him to shut his mouth. Nova spoke next, her voice cold and precise. She explained to the guards what the others refused to understand, that Drake couldn't hide behind his family name. He'd never been formally acknowledged by his Viscount father. No family name, no official recognition, just a bastard son the household preferred to forget. The family had zero reason to intervene on his behalf, especially now that he'd attacked a ducal princess. A child Viscount house picking a fight with the Gourmet dukedom over a disowned illegitimate son? The math didn't work for anyone. Then I produced my market participation badge, today's date, proof I was a licensed merchant for the day, protected under commercial law. In this empire, commerce was sacred. The crown taxed merchants heavily, and in exchange, the crown protected them absolutely. Attacking a merchant was banditry. Banditry carried the death penalty. Funny thing, I said, looking straight at Drake. If we'd come yesterday, I couldn't have added that charge. Lucky timing, don't you think? His face went white. He understood. This wasn't luck. I'd chosen today because today was market day. Every single piece of this had been planned from the moment I walked through those doors. The settlement was simple. 12 billion zenny in damages, split 3 ways. The mob of adventurers, the guild itself, and noble blood. Shedburn appeared out of nowhere. The man had informants tracking my every move, and I couldn't even be mad about it. He offered to cover the adventurers' debts in exchange for their labor. He wanted me to brew 3 medicines, a nutrient supplement, an anti-infection drug, and a stimulant that eliminated the need for sleep. With those, he'd put the debt-bound adventurers to work, cleaning the city's sewer system. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. No breaks, no sleep, no sick days. The debt would be paid through their bodies. For the guild, same deal. Shedburn would absorb the institution itself, pocket the commission fees, and work the staff until every zenny was repaid. Navisis, the divine voice in my head, confirmed the medicines were feasible. Vaccines, essentially. Diluted pathogens rendered harmless, training the body to resist infection. The same principle I'd used for antitoxins. I told Shedburn I could deliver. We shook hands and laughed like villains in a period drama. I was aware of how it looked. I didn't care. That left noble blood, 300 million each, and they had less than 50,000 between them. Let me try something, I said. I activated the lending business skill. The paper I placed in front of Drake wasn't just a contract, it was a supernatural instrument. His signature, any signature, willing or coerced, would bind the debtor to collection by divine law. I told him to sign or hang. He signed. Garen signed. Zara and Celeste signed. Numbers appeared on each sheet, glowing faintly. 300 million. Then, I directed the skill toward their family's estates. Cash first, then jewelry, then gold trim on door frames, gemstones on sword pommels, precious metals on horse tack. The numbers ticked down in real time. Luna watched the figures drop with wide eyes. It wasn't enough, not even close. Zara's family had the most. Her count dropped to 110 million. Celeste is barely moved, still over 200 million. Next, I said, ability scores. What? 1 point 10,000 zenny. I'll buy your stats. The skill extracted their physical parameters like draining water from a tank. Strength, agility, stamina, dexterity. Everything above the minimum threshold of 10 was mine to redistribute. I split the gains among my party. Arya got all the magic points. Luna and Nova got the life force. The rest, I divided evenly. What remained of noble blood was medically fascinating. Average humans scored around 100 in each stat. These 4 had been running on 60 to 70 their entire careers, artificially inflated to functional levels by drinking my enchanted spring water every day. Without it, they'd always been below average. They just never knew. One more thing, I said. Combat skills. Drake's magic swordsman abilities. Garen's supreme monk techniques. Zara's explosion magic. Celeste's holy healing. I bought them all at 10 million each. Powerful skills, technically, but crippled without the base stats to fuel them. Still, you never knew when something would prove useful. Their skills, their stats, their family heirlooms, everything that made noble blood who they were. I dismantled it, converted it to currency, and watched the numbers tick down on glowing paper. They lay on the floor throughout, bound by Aria's ivy, watching their entire identity get liquidated like a bankrupt estate. And the remaining debt was still enormous. Hundreds of millions, unpayable through any conventional means. That's when I remembered something from Shinjuku, a business model I'd seen on a side street in Tokyo, adapted for a world with healing potions and no labor laws. A few days later, the lower district had a new attraction. 2 wooden pillars driven into the ground. Drake was tied to one, Garen to the other. A sign read, 1,000 zeni per hit, weapons available for an additional fee. A line had already formed. By mid-morning, it stretched around the corner. These two hadn't just tormented me. They'd bullied shopkeepers, shoved aside commoners, pulled noble rank on anyone who couldn't fight back. Years of petty tyranny, and the neighborhood remembered all of it. Now, for a modest fee, anyone could collect on that debt. The first man in line cracked his knuckles. He'd been waiting for this. "Stop!" Drake screamed. "Stop it, please! Please?" The man laughed. "Now you say please?" He swung. The line moved forward. Some paid extra for clubs. One man brought his own. A woman who ran a fruit stall that Drake had once overturned. She stood in line twice. The second time, she brought her teenage son. Between beatings, my potions were splashed over them, healing every wound, restoring consciousness, resetting the clock. The crowd cheered each time the potion worked, not because they were cruel, because they'd been powerless for years. And now, for the first time, power was affordable. 1,000 zeni, the price of a day's lunch. That's what it cost to hit a man who used to hit you for free. Fresh canvas for fresh punishment. The business model was self-sustaining. I already know the comments section is going to split right down the middle on this one. Some of you are cheering. Some of you are staring at the screen with your mouth open. Both reactions are correct. That's the point. Zara and Celeste were sold to a brothel, daughter of a viscount's house, holder of the supreme enchantress title, holder of the high priestess title. The establishment marketed them accordingly, and business boomed. 20 to 25 million zeni per day between them. Not that they'd ever see a coin of it. Drake and Garen earned less, 10 to 15 million a day, but the customers kept coming. Someone always had a grudge. Someone always had 1,000 zeni to spare. During a lull between customers, Drake and Garen talked. "If we're earning this much," Drake muttered through swollen lips, "a few years and we're free." Shedburn's man overheard and laughed. "Free? You borrowed 300 million each. Interest is compounding. You think you're paying this down? You're barely covering the interest. And even if you somehow finished, the moment you walk free, the Temple Knights arrest you for attacking the Duchess's granddaughter. You're not paying off a debt. You're renting the privilege of not being executed." Drake said nothing. A new customer approached, paid extra for the club. Drake lost consciousness before the third swing. The potion was applied. He woke. The customer continued. Somewhere in his shattered, swelling thoughts, a question surfaced. When did this start? When did everything fall apart? He'd been a rising star, highest tier class, noble blood, a party that dominated every quest. Money, status, power, a clear road to glory. He couldn't remember the moment it broke, couldn't identify the hinge. That was the cruelest part, because I could. I remembered the exact moment. It was the day a 16-year-old aristocrat looked at a 22-year-old baggage carrier and decided he was worthless. He was wrong, and this, all of this, was what being wrong cost. That night, I sat on the floor of my room with Luna in my lap, Arya at my back, and Nova polishing her spear by the wall. The numbers were in. My level, 51. My fortune, more than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. My party, 4 strong, armed with weapons that outclassed anything in the city. My enemies, broken, bound, and bleeding for profit. I should have felt victorious, and part of me did. The cold, calculating part that had orchestrated every step. The part that had chosen market day deliberately, hidden Nova as a failsafe, baited Drake into attacking first so the charges would stick. But there was another part, a quieter part. The part that remembered being punched in the face for asking about my share of the loot. The part that remembered Bianca snapping my adventurer's card in half with her gaudy nails. The part that had walked out of the guild with nothing. No money, no status, no future, and thought, this is how I die. That version of me would have been horrified by what I'd just done. Not because it was wrong, because it was thorough. Kai, Nova said softly. Are you all right? Yeah, I said, just thinking. Don't think too hard, Luna murmured against my chest. You won. They lost. That's how it works. She's right, Arya said from behind me. Justice was served. The method was creative. Creative, I repeated. Efficient, she corrected. I looked at the three of them. Luna's ears twitched in her half-sleep. Arya's breath was warm against my neck. Nova's hands moved steadily along her spear shaft, the rhythm almost meditative. I'd built something, not just a business, not just a party, a family, armed, dangerous, and completely, irrationally loyal to a man who sold shaved ice and diamond claws in the same afternoon. Tomorrow, there would be more to do. There was always more. But tonight, the room was warm. The spring water hummed in the pipes, and the people who tried to destroy me were learning what destruction actually looked like. I closed my eyes. The debt was paid. The settlement from Drake's allies came through 3 days later. 3.6 billion zenny, transferred cleanly through Shedburn's office without a single digit out of place. Between that and everything else, the gems, the medicine, the forced labor revenue streams, the number on my account screen had stopped looking like money and started looking like a weather system, a pressure front you couldn't argue with. That night, while the 3 women slept in our twin futons pushed together, I opened the laptop. The cash conversion from Traveler's gems hit immediately. Level 60, level 61. The numbers kept climbing until the divine voice cut in. Level 60 reached. New purchasable items unlocked. On the screen, below the usual rows of skills and supplies, something new had appeared. Servant summoning, model RGN, 27.5 million zenny. I stared at it for a long time. Servant summoning, RGN, a model designation, like a product line? My mind went to the robot anime I'd watched as a kid, the plastic models I'd built at the kitchen table. 27.5 million was steep, but if this was what I thought it was, I bought it. A small box materialized on the tatami. Inside were metal parts, neatly packed. An assembly kit, not plastic, actual metal components. Pearl white with brick red accents on the shoulders and chest. I started building. By morning, Arya identified the crucial piece, a magical control plate, 1 centimeter square, thinner than a coin. She and Nova pressed against my back, channeling magic as support while I poured energy into the plate. Arya hummed an ancient golem song. The plate absorbed the magic, flew into the assembled body, and light exploded from every seam. When my eyes adjusted, there was a girl on my tea table. She had green-tinted bangs hanging past her eyes, a brick red blazer over a dark white skirt, and absolutely no idea how to stand on furniture. She tumbled off the table. Arya caught her with levitation magic, and the first words out of her mouth were a panicked squeal. "You're already on the ground," I said, because nothing else seemed appropriate. Her name, it turned out, was not a name at all. RGN was a type designation, a species label for magical constructs, like calling yourself Cat Beastman instead of Luna. She was earnest, clumsy, eager to please, and her proudest skill was cleaning. 27.5 million zenny for a housekeeper. But something about her was different. She drank tea and converted it to magical energy. She had facial expressions no golem should possess. And when she looked at me through that curtain of green hair, there was something behind it that felt less like programming and more like hope. I recognized that look. I'd worn it myself once. The look of something the world had written off, waiting to be seen. A construct with no name. A designation instead of an identity. Sound familiar? It should. Because what I do with her from this moment forward says more about who I am than any amount of money ever could. Learn everything you can, I told her. Watch how the world works. Ask questions. Yes, master. Meanwhile, Count Mirabayosh was learning what my lending business skill actually did at scale. His golden door handles had vanished. His jade paperweight, every valuable in the estate, spirited away by supernatural debt enforcement he couldn't see or stop. The Count's response was predictable. He sent a servant to check on Drake, hoping to squeeze money from his bastard son. The servant returned with news of a boy tied to a pillar in the slums, working off an unpayable debt. Mirabalosh disowned Drake the same afternoon. No sentiment, no hesitation, just a ledger entry that no longer balanced. I hadn't planned that part, but I wasn't sorry about it either. We left Abukusum that evening. Shedburn had suggested it himself. Too much attention after the guild incident. The port city of Portwin lay to the north, a free trade city governed by a council of wealthy merchants. Like Sakai during Japan's Warring States period, a city that had bought its own independence with gold and mercenaries. Arthur's farewell hit harder than I expected. He gripped my shoulders with those calloused hands, and his voice cracked on the last word. Go on then, and when you open that shop someday, I'll supply the woodwork. I left Alyssa a bag of Compado candy and a promise I'd keep. The 5 of us departed through the outer gate together. Luna insisted we all jump simultaneously as our first step. RGN fell, naturally. Arya caught her with magic, then floated ahead of everyone and declared she'd won the right to never mind. The solemn mood lasted about 4 seconds. That was fine. With these 4, silence never lasted long, and right then, their noise was exactly what I needed. 10 days north, we hit the waystation town of La Fontaine. The river crossing was washed out. A flood had destroyed the pontoon bridge, and repairs would take another 10 days minimum. People crammed the town, hemorrhaging money on overpriced rooms while waiting. We didn't need rooms. My apartment skill meant we slept, bathed, and ate in comfort, regardless of geography. But the delay chafed. I hadn't come this far to sit still. Then Arya brought news from the guild. A landslide had exposed an ancient ruin half a day east, unexplored, untouched. Dungeon? I said. Dungeon, Luna confirmed, tail straight up, eyes gleaming, and I want to go. We met Jireh at the ruins entrance. I should say, Jireh met us. He materialized in polished armor, swept golden hair from his eyes, and introduced himself as the heir of the Whitebird Viscounty and top student at the Portwin Academy. He was a narcissist of genuinely impressive commitment. He monologued about his brilliance, offered to escort these lovely ladies away from me, and when Arya turned us invisible mid-sentence, he was still talking to empty air. The man was ridiculous, but not cruel, and his supply planning, 10 people, including 3 dedicated porters carrying 10 days of provisions, was actually competent. He even rotated guard shifts during rest stops, something half the professional parties I'd seen wouldn't bother with. Jireh was a fool with excellent fundamentals. I filed that contradiction away and moved on. The dungeon was wrong, not dangerous wrong, structurally wrong. It was built like a fortress, not a cave. Stone corridors, precise architecture, deliberately designed chambers. But Nova pointed out the contradiction immediately. A fortress was meant to be defended. This place drained stamina, hunger, and thirst at triple speed. Any garrison would starve itself. Unless, Arya said quietly, the fortress was never meant to protect people inside, only to exhaust anyone trying to reach what's at the center. The time distortion hit us within 2 hours. Luna was hungry. Nova was exhausted. Arya's lighting magic, designed to last 7 hours, flickered after 2. RGN confirmed from our apartment. Barely any real time had passed. The dungeon was eating our reserves 3 times faster than normal. For anyone else, this would be a death trap, but I could pull the entire party back to my apartment for food, sleep, and resupply at any moment. Other parties retreated with empty water skins. Jireh's group burned through provisions despite their careful planning. We ate sandwiches on tatami mats and took hot baths between exploration sessions. This dungeon's compatibility with your abilities is off the charts, Arya said, leaning against me. She wasn't wrong. For the first time, the merchant class wasn't a handicap. It was the decisive advantage. RGN earned her place on the 3rd day. She tripped, stumbled, and while I caught her, she noticed something none of us could see. The wall behind me was different. Not visually, not magically. Different in a way only a construct could sense. When she approached it, the stone split apart silently, like automatic doors responding to a key only she carried. Behind that wall, a corridor lined with puppet orcs, wooden soldiers, motionless as tomb guardians, who activated the moment we crossed a threshold. 3 waves followed. Puppet orcs and wood golems, increasingly coordinated. Luna demolished wood golems with flying kicks that splintered their trunks. Nova extracted magic cores with surgical lance thrusts so fast they sounded like a single impact. I discovered that my new combat classes, brawler, karate, judo, sumo, all purchased in a late-night shopping spree, let me split dried-out wooden enemies like firewood. My secret technique, hatchet drop, was really just splitting logs. Arya herded the final wave with a magic wall, then incinerated them. Wood enemies against a fire mage, kindling. Beyond the 3rd wave stood a massive door. That night, while everyone slept, I sat at the tea table with RGN and stared at my laptop screen. The dungeon had shown me something I didn't like. Against the puppet orcs, fine. I could split firewood all day, but the wood golems? I'd needed sustained hammering just to crack one open. If something bigger waited behind that door, my hatchet and my fists wouldn't cut it. New classes had appeared in the purchase menu. Scout, which I'd bought to level 5. Then Archer, unlocked as an advanced class. RGN explained the system. Combining base classes created hybrid options with specialized traits. Archer boosted bow proficiency. I used a crossbow, not the same weapon category. Ah, RGN said, her enthusiasm deflating. But buying Archer unlocked Crossbow Specialist, a class that enhanced exactly my weapon. And beyond that, Brawler, which led to Karate, Judo, Ancient Martial Arts, Sumo. Each one cheap compared to what I'd spent on Revenge, and each one feeding new combat parameters into my body. 1.1 billion zenny. The cost of turning a merchant into something that could stand in a boss room and not be dead weight. I tested the combinations in the entryway, vibrato humming through my fists while I punched a piece of firewood. The log didn't split, it disintegrated. Wood powder hung in the air like mist. Master, that was incredible, RGN whispered. That was a piece of wood, I said. Let's see if it works on something that hits back. We rested, we ate, we planned. Then, we opened the massive door. 3 golems waited inside. 2 wood golems and a stone golem. The stone golem was legend class. Luna's kicks bounced off. Her strongest redirected punch, deflecting the golem's own fist into its own face, barely chipped it. The unbreakable golem, a voice announced from the chamber's depths, dragon stomped and still standing. From the shadows behind the golems, someone was watching. I took the wood golems with vibration-enhanced palm strikes, while Nova handled the other. Luna and Arya faced the stone golem together. Arya's solution was elegant and devastating. Superheat the stone from within using nuclear thermal magic, then flash freeze it with permafrost. The temperature differential turned legend-class granite into cracked pottery. Luna punched straight through its chest. The stone golem crumbled, and the true boss stood up from his throne. Metal footsteps rang against stone. A full suit of adamantite armor, dark and lusterless. An iron mask with no face behind it, a lance in one hand. Then, a metal horse materialized beneath him, and the Iron Knight charged. The lance swept horizontally, too fast to dodge. I screamed the recall command and teleported all 5 of us to my apartment a heartbeat before impact. We came back seconds later. Arya combined my vibrato skill with her acid water magic, riddling the iron horse with corrosion and microfractures. When the horse charged again, its front legs shattered under its own weight. The knight was thrown. He landed on his feet, perfectly balanced. Not a scratch on the adamantite. He laughed. Not mockery. Something older. Something hungry and delighted and terribly, terribly patient. Interesting, he said. Truly interesting. It has been quite some time since anyone destroyed one of my possessions. His name was Roland. He told us this after dismissing his destroyed mount with a wave, after shrugging off everything we threw at him, after kicking Luna and Nova into me and Arya with a single spinning strike that left all 4 of us on the floor. RGN saved us. She scrambled to our sides and poured healing potion over our injuries. My own medicine, and for the first time, I felt its effects from the receiving end. We stood. Arya collapsed from magic exhaustion. RGN caught her. Roland waited. That was the thing about him. He waited. Here's the thing nobody expects. Roland isn't the villain. He's not evil. He's not a monster. He's a knight, an honorable one. And what happens next is going to hit different because of that. Then he asked a question that changed everything. Is there one among you who can defeat me? Step forward. Luna protested. Nova begged me to retreat and regroup. Arya was unconscious. RGN stood frozen, and Roland asked again, louder. I asked a third time, is there one who will face me? I understood then. This wasn't about winning. It wasn't about treasure or proving a point. Roland had been sealed in this fortress for 1,000 years. His magic was nearly gone. When it ran out, he would simply stop, like a clock winding down. He'd waited a millennium in silence for someone to enter this room, and now he was asking the only question that mattered to a warrior. Will you fight me? Not, can you beat me? Will you fight me? I knew that feeling, not the warrior's version, the other kind. Being sealed away, being told your purpose doesn't exist, being left in a room where nobody comes. Why would a merchant accept a duel against an ancient knight he can't possibly beat? That's the question, isn't it? The answer isn't what you think, and it's the reason this fight matters more than every billion zenny I've ever made. Here, I said. My voice cracked on the word. I'm right here. I stepped forward. That spirit, Roland said. Good. He named himself. I named myself. He raised a barrier that sealed my companions behind invisible glass. One-on-one. No interruptions. No merchant tricks. No enchanted water or supernatural debt collection or clever economic strategies. Just 2 people refusing to quit. I downed my last magic potion in one pull and tossed the empty bottle. It clattered across the stone floor, absurdly casual. You don't wish to say farewell to your companions? Roland asked. No. because saying farewell meant accepting I might not come back, and I was coming back. So be it. I fought with my fists. The vibrato skill turned every punch into a resonance weapon, vibrations that penetrated adamantite and echoed through his hollow body. He was 2.5 meters tall. I was nobody's idea of a fighter, but my stats had grown monstrous through merchant class investment, and every combat subclass I'd purchased fed knowledge directly into my muscles. I slid between his legs on the opening charge and hammered his lower back. Metal rang. He swept a backhand I dodged by clinging to his left shin. When he created distance, I screamed vibrato through my voice, and the shockwave staggered him. He answered with wind pressure. One arm swing generated a blast wave that knocked me backward even through a guard. When I matched it with another vibrato shout, he smiled behind that iron mask. I could feel it and swung both arms. Double the wind. I flew. He landed on me from above. I headbutted him mid-descent, channeling the full weight of my body through my skull into his chest. The impact sent him stumbling. He came back with a flying body press. I caught him on one arm, pivoted, and threw him using his own momentum. The ancient warrior technique worked. Roland crashed onto his back. Stone cracked beneath him, but the throw cost me everything. My left Achilles tendon snapped. I felt it go, a sick, wet pop that traveled up my entire leg. I collapsed onto Roland's chest, and in that half second of falling, I saw it. The crack, left chest, hairline fracture spreading from where Luna, Nova, and I had each landed blows throughout the fight. Vibrato, both palms, everything I had left. I slammed them down on either side of his chest. The vibrations entered from 2 points and ricocheted through his body, bouncing off his back, his limbs, his iron skull, reflecting and amplifying in a storm of resonance. My double attack, I gasped. He grabbed my collar and threw me across the room. I hit the floor, rolled, stopped. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, Roland stood, slowly. The cracks in his chest had spread to his neck, his shoulders, his ribs. His body had lost its luster, dull iron, where adamantite once gleamed. He was burning the last of his magic just to stay upright. You would truly continue? He asked. I dragged myself to my feet on one leg, the right one. The left was useless. Swelling, screaming, done. I stood there shaking like a newborn deer, and I did not look away. Yeah, I said. He charged. Last reserves. Everything. I spun. A full rotation, right leg as the axis, both arms extended. The stupidest, most desperate technique in fighting. A double lariat. My fist connected with his cracked left chest a fraction of a second before his arm reached me. The sound was like thunder breaking inside a bell. Every fracture in his body connected at once. 1,000 hairline cracks joining into a single catastrophic fault line. Roland split, upper body from lower. The two halves separated in midair, crashed to the stone floor on either side of me, and the fortress shook to its foundations. He was still alive, barely. I limped to where his upper body lay. His iron mask faced the ceiling. The faint glow that had once emanated from his joints was guttering like a candle in wind. "What is that face?" he said. I didn't know what face I was making, but it wasn't joy. A victor should not wear that expression, Roland continued. His voice was becoming thin, translucent, like the rest of him. Particles of adamantite were rising from his body like steam. You defeated the one called Iron Knight. That is honor. Roland, on the battlefield, when a warrior proclaims his victory, it serves two purposes. His words came slower now, each one costing something. To celebrate the victor and to honor the defeated. The louder the cry, the greater the worth of the one who fell. I understood, and I hated that I understood. Iron Knight. Roland. I shouted it at the ceiling because I couldn't bear to shout it at the man dissolving beneath me. Defeated! Yes, that is correct. The particles rose faster. His chest was translucent. His legs were gone. Strange. We fought only once, yet I feel as though I waited 1,000 years. For you specifically. His iron mask turned toward me one last time. Let me see your face at the end. I knelt beside him. The stone floor was cold under my knees. I said nothing. There was nothing in any language. Japanese, this world's common tongue, or the silence between them, that was adequate. After I'm gone, a bracelet will remain. Take it and ride the battlefields. He didn't finish. The last particle of the Iron Knight rose into the dark ceiling of the fortress and vanished. A single adamantite bracelet clinked against the stone floor and rolled to a stop. Farewell, worthy enemy. I heard it, or imagined it. Either way, I answered. Farewell, Roland. The barrier dissolved, Footsteps approached. Luna knelt beside me. "Are you crying?" she asked. Quiet. No teasing. I touched my face. Wet. I hadn't noticed. "Kai, why?" Nova's voice. Careful and confused. "He was the enemy. You're not even an adventurer anymore. You had no reason to fight him." "2 reasons," I said. My voice sounded strange to me, hoarse and raw, like someone who'd been shouting into wind. I was lying on a futon now. Luna was applying ointment to my shattered left foot, the topical kind, not the drinking potion. Localized treatment, narrow and deep instead of broad and shallow. Arya peered through her monocle and announced 5 hours to full recovery. First, I understood what he wanted. His magic was dying. When it ran out, he'd just stop, disappear in a sealed room where no one would ever know he existed. He was a warrior, a knight, proud. He wanted to end as what he was, not fade into nothing. I felt that wish, and I couldn't refuse it. The room was quiet. Even Luna's hands had paused on my ankle. Second, I can't keep running, not from everything. Someday, a fight will find us where I can't teleport everyone away. Someday, one of you will be in danger, and the only thing standing between you and whatever's coming will be me. If I run every time, it becomes habit, and habits don't break when it matters most. I exhaled. It felt like emptying every last pocket of air from my chest, lighter than I'd felt in weeks. "I'm not a hero," I added. "I'll never fight for strangers or abstract causes. I'm not built that way, and I won't pretend otherwise. But the people in this room, you 4, that's enough. That's who I fight for. That's who I'll always fight for." Nobody spoke for a long time. The lamp flickered. Somewhere in the apartment, a kettle RGN had put on earlier let out a thin whistle. Then, Luna resumed applying the ointment, very gently. Nova wrapped my foot in a bath towel and lowered me onto the futon. Arya crawled in on one side, lacing her arm through mine. Nova took the other. Luna curled up on my chest like a cat finding the warmest spot. "Master," RGN said from somewhere nearby, sounding like she might cry if constructs could cry. Arya directed her to provide a lap pillow at my head. Luna was asleep within seconds. Then Nova. Then Arya. RGN sat perfectly still, my head on her legs, standing guard over a family she'd known for less than a month. I closed my eyes. The dungeon was behind us. The road to Portwyn waited ahead. Roland's bracelet sat on the tea table, catching the lamplight. I was level 65, wealthy beyond comprehension, loved by 4 people who had chosen me as completely as I'd chosen them, and, for the first time since arriving in this world, at peace. Not the dark peace of revenge fulfilled, not the cold peace of an account settling. Something warmer, something I'd earned not with money or cunning, but with 2 fists and 1 functioning leg, and a refusal to let a dying warrior's last wish go unanswered. The debt was different this time. No one owed anyone anything. No contracts, no interest, no supernatural enforcement. Just a man who'd been called worthless, honoring a warrior the world had forgotten. Both were real. The merchant who destroyed Drake and the fool who fought an iron knight, barehanded for nothing but empathy. Both lived inside me. Both always had. I slept.